Hello and welcome back to my channel. I feel like I hear things. Can't tell if that's my dog getting into trouble. Okay, no, I don't think that's her. I'm just gonna get into the video. I'm not gonna do a recap or anything. I did a plot summary for Lightlark and I worked on the script for Nighbane. I had to go back through the book again, like a second time. So it took me some time to write out everything, summarize everything, but I've got it done. I'm gonna get into it. If you need an update on the story at all, you can watch my first video about the first book. So here's everything you need to know about Lightlark Part 2, also called Nighbane. Nighbane opens up exactly where the first book left off, so we're literally picking up at the same scene. There was a mysterious vault in the Place of Mirrors, which is like a wildling abandoned palace on the abandoned Wild Isle, and Isla, I'm like pretty sure. I was like so 100% sure in the first video talking about Lightlark that I was pronouncing Isla's name correctly. I don't know where I got the pronunciation that I got. Like, I thought it was correct, but it's Isla. Isla had to open the vault with her crown. She manages to unlock the vault, but it slams shut on her. She cracks her head against the stone floor because she's like pushed back by this invisible source within the vault. So Isla thinks that there's something in the vault, like a creature or force of some sort. Meanwhile, after Isla gets knocked out by this, invisible thing within the vault, she has a vision of Grimshaw, the ruler of Nightshade, surrounded by like carnage, chaos, and within this vision she hears Grim asking for her to come back to him, because if you do not recall, then I will briefly mention that Isla and Grim were in a relationship before the events of Lightlark. He erased her memories. It's revealed to her that her and Grim were actually in a relationship previously. In the next chapter, Isla goes to Oro and she tells him that whatever is in the vault rejected her and believes that this is due to her not having any mastery over her powers yet. She needs to train and just get better at using her powers for the vault to respect her, because I suppose it's sentient. Isla has a moment of like, well, there's no wildling masters who are left to teach me. I didn't even know that there were masters to teach anyone, to be honest, but just adding to the lore, I suppose. Oro offers to teach Isla. Oro did not have wildling powers. He is, yeah, you really have to watch my first video to know what I'm talking about, because even me now, like, I can explain it, but I don't know if I want to. So you're gonna just have to have the knowledge that I dropped in the first video. I'm gonna talk as if you know what I'm talking about. Oro did not, he has pretty much every power within this world except for wildling power and nightshade power, because they're not connected to Lightlark. So even though he does not have wildling power, he feels like he can be a good teacher for Isla because he has learned to master so many other types of powers and elements. Nightshade and wildling, they're the two good groups of people who left Lightlark to start their own isles. So everybody else connected to Lightlark, that would be sunlings, skylings, starlings. I don't think there's anybody else. Pretty sure that's it. He has their powers along with the sunling powers that he already possesses. But Oro does have access now to wildling powers because he is in love with Isla. She hated his concern and she hated herself for the anger that had hardened inside her like a blade that struck out at even something as innocent as worry. Lately, though, she couldn't seem to control any of her emotions. Sometimes she woke up and didn't have the energy to even get out of bed. Other times, she was so angry she portaled to Wild Isle just to have a place to scream. "I will teach you," he said. "You're not a wildling master." "No," he admitted, "but I have mastered 4 realms' powers. The abilities are different, but the execution is similar." His voice was gentle, gentler than she deserved. "It was how I was able to use your power. It was how he was able to save her. She would have been boiled alive by the core of the island if Oro hadn't used the bond between them to claim her powers in the Place of Mirrors. That had been the moment her feelings for him were revealed. The fact that he could access her abilities meant she loved him, though she didn't even know what that love was. She had loved her guardian, she had loved Celeste, she had at some point loved Grim. The vision, death and darkness and decay. Was it a threat? A glimpse of the future? The weight around her neck felt even heavier now. The necklace Grimm had gifted her during the centennial had been impossible to remove, and yes, she had tried. It had a clasp, but so far it had refused to open. It seemed there was no real way to take it off, only she could feel it. Oro didn't even know it existed. Isla wondered if Grimm was like that necklace, insistent and refusing to let her go. Would he kill people just to have her? I have to tell you something. She considered keeping it to herself. If it had involved only her, she might have. She had broken the curses. She deserved more time to recover. Her cuts and bruises from the centennial had disappeared, but some wounds were invisible and took far longer to heal than broken skin and bones. So this, Oro says to Isla that he won't stop until he has you, and implying that Grimm will start a war over Isla. Isla will have to train in order to be powerful enough to, I suppose, stop Grimm should he attack. Well, I mean, like, I guess she would just be a contributing factor. I don't think that, like, the fate of Lightlark would rest solely upon Isla knowing how to use her powers, but, you know, perhaps. But she also needs to learn how to use her powers because she has Wildling, Nightshade, and Starling power. So she's always been a Wildling, to her knowledge, but she's half Nightshade. Her father was Nightshade, that she learned in the last book, and then she took the Starling ruler's powers when she killed her. They're like this bond breaker thing, which you should know what it is if you're educated. So though despite having all this power, it's hard for Isla to still use them. Not only, again, is she not super experienced, but also her Nightshade powers, because Nightshades can make things invisible. So for some reason, they were making her power initially, because she didn't have Starling power, she had Wildling power. So it made her power, you know, from the time she was a child up until like now she's like 19, 20. Her Nightshade power was making her other power invisible. So she thought she was powerless, but it was actually just the Nightshade ability was masking her other stuff. Isla does not want to train. She thinks it's a waste of time. She thinks that she needs to master her powers, but she's not like, oh, I need to train. Which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, why does she think she doesn't need to if she also wants to master her powers? I don't know. She's more preoccupied with returning to Wildling and being a ruler for them, because for the longest time she was not a ruler to them. She was being hidden away from her handlers, Tara and Poppy. She was being hidden from her people because they thought she was powerless, and they, didn't want their people to know that she was powerless, that their ruler is powerless. But not only does she have Wildling now to rule, she also has Starling as well, and she needs to help them. So when Isla killed Aurora, she had used, Aurora is Celeste. Celeste was Aurora. She had used an ancient relic called the Bond Maker to steal all the Starling's power. The action served as a loophole to fulfill the part of the prophecy that stated a ruler had to die to break the curses. A ruler's power functioned as the life force of their people. All Starlings would have died along with Aurora if Isla hadn't stolen that power. So again, Isla does not want to train. It also, for some reason, would remind her of the ways that she's been hurt. She found out her parents were killed by people that she was supposed to trust. She never knew she was half Nightshade, didn't know her father, and then the only reason she has Starling power is because she had to kill a person who she thought was her best friend, who was actually posing as somebody else. I do feel like her not wanting to use her power is kind of a way to sort of make the plot go slower. Like, she's been wanting power this whole entire time. You'd think that she'd be happy to now have power. Another way to kind of push the plot back and make it not so quick, because I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens in this book, like, it could happen really quickly. Like, we could get to the point quicker, but there's certain things that are like delaying it. So another way that there's a delay in the plot is in this form. Isla placed her hand on his chest, Oro, and felt him stiffen. He was warm in a comforting way that made her want to feel his bare skin beneath her fingers. He did not move an inch as she got closer and closer still. They had barely talked about the connection between them, the undeniable thread. He had let her have her space. She had wanted to take things slow, not rush in the way she had with Grimm. But at that moment, she didn't want any space between them. She stood on her toes, wanting to bridge the gap between her lips and his. Finally, but no matter how long she stretched her neck, she couldn't reach him. Oro stared down at her and frowned. Is this your attempt to distract me? Absolutely. She didn't want to master her powers. She didn't want to think about any of her newfound abilities. Once she started, she would have to think about things and people that had scarred her, perhaps beyond repair. Yes, let me. He lowered his head. His golden crown winked in the light. Then his hands were on her waist. His fingers were long across her back. She arched into his touch. He grabbed her so tightly she gasped. But before she could wrap her legs around his waist, he carried her to the bed and dropped her back onto the sheets. By the time she made a sound of protest, he was at the door. Rest, Isla, he said. The dinner is in a few hours. She groaned. It was the first time representatives were all meeting to discuss the aftermath of the curses. Then we'll begin our training. Even though Oro was very attracted to Isla, it's very clear he likes her. She obviously likes him. She's very forward and aggressive in her advances. He refuses to do anything with her. And this will continue on through much of the novel. Isla makes advances, Oro refuses. And really for no particular reason. Like, I get wanting to take things slow, but it's like, you like her, and she's like throwing herself at you like a few times. It's a little like, girl, stand up. Third chapter, and we're dressing up again, trying on outfits. Isla goes to the starling tailor, whose name is Leto, and it tells him to make her look like a sword for this banquet that's being held with a bunch of Sunling nobles. She gets her sword dress. They all sit down for dinner, with Oro naturally sitting at the head of the table, as he is the king of Lightlark, and he's making eyes at Isla. Oro sat at the head of the table, and he was also watching. The king would have looked exactly like he did at the beginning of the centennial at that first dinner, if not for his eyes. Back then, his eyes had been hollow as honeycomb. Now they burned... I can't read. Now they burned right through her with an intensity that made any previous thoughts unspool around her. He almost imperceptibly traced her with his gaze, her bare tan shoulders, the silk and steel corset, the slit in her dress revealing knee-high boots she didn't make them. She didn't make them because they were more practical than her heels or slippers. Her long brown hair with tiny red flowers woven through the ends. She watched him back for just a second. His broad shoulders, golden hair, the sharp pains of a smooth face. He had been paler before after so many years without sunlight, but now he was glowing, radiant. He was so beautiful it almost hurt looking at him. She didn't remember noticing how attractive he was at that first dinner. Was that love? No, girly pop. You just think he's a hot. So Azul comes in, and I honestly, quite frankly, like Azul a lot. I feel like a lot of these writers, like, they have the one black character who's just really likable and that I wish was more featured more. At this meeting, banquet, whatever, Azul is there with some elected officials with him, and he greets Isla. So Azul came around the table to greet Isla, though his seat was on the other side of Oro. Your style has changed, he mused. His, happily, had not. The ruler of Skyling was wearing a tunic with shards cut out of its sides and bulbous sapphires in place of buttons. He wore a ring on every finger. It was her first time seeing him since the centennial had ended. You should have sought him out, her mind whispered, another failing. She wanted to ask how he was doing after watching the specter of his long-lost husband disappear once the storm cleared. I don't remember that. I don't remember that at all. Did that happen? I don't think it happened. I don't remember that at all. She wanted to apologize for believing even for a moment that he was her enemy. She wanted to ask him how these Skylings were faring in the aftermath. Before she could get a word out, Azul said, we can make time to meet if you would like. I would like that very much, she said. Good. He dipped his chin and whispered, beware. Someone is always watching. He was right. Conversation had started up, but she could still feel attention fixed firmly on her. In the days that she had spent in her room after the end of the centennial, Oro had told the island's nobles and representatives that Isla had broken the curses and gained the power of a starling ruler. The news had swiftly spread among the people of Lightlark. So no one else besides Grimm, Oro, Isla, and Aurora, who is dead as far as we know, were there to witness Isla breaking the curses. Oro spread the news that Isla broke the curses, and people are judging her because, and I quote from the book, the leaders sitting around her now had watched her stumble her way through most of the Centennial's trials. They must have wondered how she, out of all the rulers, had been the one to finally put an end to the curses. Isla did not stumble through the trials. She purposely did a so-so job. That was her plan with Celeste, who turned out to be Aurora, that they would not do like super great. Like, that was the plan. Their plan was to coast through the trials so no one would, like, pay any attention to them. And in fact, Celeste/Aurora actually got mad at Isla because there were certain trials where she brought attention to herself for doing pretty well. Like, there were 1 or 2 trials where Isla actually did a good job. So, like, it feels like the author forgot that. So Starling Girl enters the banquet, and so far that's all the realms that we're getting. We have Oro, Sudling, Isla, Wildling, Azul, Skyling, and then the new Starling Girl. Her name is Marin. She's really pretty. She has light brown skin and long black hair. Grimm is obviously not present. He is an enemy of the people. And then also Cleo, Moonling, she's a Moonling ruler, is noticeably missing. The dinner is being held to celebrate the end of the curses because remember, this is right after the first book. I don't know exactly the amount of time that has passed, really. Maybe a couple weeks or a couple days. But the curses have just been broken. They're celebrating that. Isla is not feeling all too comfortable. Oro put a lot of attention on her for making her the curse breaker. She's also thinking a lot about the fact that she's half Nightshade. No one except Grimm and Oro knows, and she wants to keep that a secret because people are racist towards Nightshades in this book. As she's thinking about all of this, Grimm's disembodied voice, even though he doesn't have mental power, so I don't know how he does it, but he says, "We are monsters, Heart Eater," or at least that's what they think. She's startled, her heart hammered. Her gaze darted around the table, expecting to find him close by or to see some reaction from the others. But he was nowhere. Maybe he was invisible. Her eyes strained to see even the smallest ripple in the air that might give him away. She waited for him to appear before them. Her hand inched toward Oro to warn him. Nothing. She knew what she'd heard, or did she? It could have been her own mind. Grimm had said those same words more than a month ago when he was still pretending not to know her. The truth was, he had known everything about her. They had a year's worth of memories together that he had made her forget to suit his own agenda at the Centennial. He had cut part of her life away as easily as Leto shearing excess fabric. So the dinner has delicacies from each realm. The dishes mostly taste good until Moonling delivers fish and a block of ice. Cleo isn't there, but this old dude from Moonling shows up. His name is Soren, and Cleo has sent him in place of her. I don't know. I'm just like laughing because the way that I write, like I don't remember anything. But as I'm going through my script again, I can tell when I'm confused because I literally wrote I'm confused. But so the conversation, I believe myself when I say that something was confusing. So the conversation that follows is confusing because even though this book picks up from the last book, the first book, it seems like a lot of stuff has happened in between the first book and the second book that we don't know about. The conversation that they have, that everybody in this scene has, does kind of let us know what would have happened in between the time from the first and the second book, but it's kind of like, when did this happen? Because it can't be that much time. Oro is super duper lovey-dovey with Isla now, but he's still king. So even though he's, gentler, seems a little nicer, not as standoffish, he still is very firm and asks Soren, where does Moonling stand? So that makes it seem like in between the first book and the second book, something has happened politically where there is discussion of the Isles wanting to leave Lightlark. Moonlings and their realm have been a part of Lightlark, but for some reason have decided to cut their... I don't get it. They've decided to cut the bridge from their realm to the mainland, which the mainland would be Lightlark. Soren says that they've done this because the curses kept people in check, and I'm assuming that means, people were hesitant to kill people, I guess. I don't know. I really don't know what that means, because really the only person that would have been in true danger would have been the rulers, because if you kill a ruler, everybody dies. But that's not a curse. Like, that's still a thing, even without the curses. So I don't actually know what that means. Since the curses have been broken, though, basically Soren says that because the curses have been broken, Moonling has enemies and they don't feel safe. Enemies from where, though? Like, which enemies? Sunlings, Skylings, Starlings? Like, who who are their enemies? Like, who are the people that don't get along in this world? We know that Nightshade doesn't really, they have the stigma in general, but like, who would be Moonling's enemies? In response to my question, which enemies, what enemies, where enemies, how enemies, and why, Soren would answer Isla. Because in this scene, he looks to Isla. They're not really like enemies, they just don't get along. So after Oro and Soren's exchange, where Oro's like, you know, has Moonling, what has Moonling decided as far as if they're staying with Lightlark or not, Oro turns to Azul and asks about Skyling's next move. So this dinner, I realized as I was reading, it's not just to celebrate the end of the curses, but it is also to decide whether the other realms will stay attached to Lightlark. Since Skyling is a democracy, the logistics of that is complicated, but since Skyling is a democracy, they have not decided yet whether they want to stay attached to Lightlark or, you know, split and have their own isle. They have to vote on it first, so the final decision has not been reached yet. Initially, I didn't know why this conversation was being had as far as who is staying with Lightlark, but I guess there's some talk of rebellion because people are not happy that it took the rulers so long to figure out how to break the curses, which is like fair. But so Isla's like, OMG, rebellion. And then she actually does think a rebellion is futile because if a ruler dies, then everybody dies. Like if one ruler dies, everybody in the realm dies. So yeah, it is futile. So what's the point? Like, what's the point of the rebellion? Like, what can they possibly do? They can't kill the rulers. So are they going to like imprison them? The rulers have so much more power than like the regular people. That's why they're rulers, and it's determined by blood because they have like, I don't know, more potent powers. Soren grills Isla about what she knows about Wildling. I don't know why Soren cares so much about Isla and her business and the people of Wildling. He's not even a Wildling unless maybe does he have friends in Wildling? Does he have a lover in Wildling? We don't know. But he wants to know how Isla's people are faring. She doesn't know really anything. And he chastises her for it, which, I mean, yeah, Isla is not a good ruler. Regardless, Marin, the Starling, is there to try and figure out who will be ruling Starling because they really need someone. Their island is a wreck. Isla offers to be the one to be the ruler. She knows she sucks as a ruler, but Marin is desperate, so she offers to do it. But I mean, like, she kind of has to anyway because she has Starling power. Like, with the way powers work in this world, she has to rule or pass on her power to somebody else, which I guess with the bond breaker, I suppose, but I'm not even sure where that went. So after the banquet, that scene, we are with Isla and Azul. She sits down with Azul and he tells her to go and mingle with her people, the wildlings, essentially because she knows nothing about them. There are certain things about their culture that she doesn't even really know about. So Azul just encourages her to go and meet with her people. Isla visits Wildling, and the first thing that she notices is how terrible everybody looks. They're emaciated, they're dehydrated, like it's really bad. Meanwhile, she's running around getting dolled up. It's not funny, but it kind of is. Like she's making out with people, getting dresses made for her, eating good food and good chocolate, and her people are starving. They bow to her regardless. I don't know why they're not more irritated with her. If there was talk of rebellion, I feel like it would be more from the wildling realm. So not only does Isla notice how terrible everybody looks, she also takes note of their animal companions, which were briefly mentioned in the first book. I honestly for a second thought that they weren't mentioned at all, but they were mentioned. Isla is supposed to have one as well, but she does not have one because Tara, who was one of her handlers, would not allow her to have one. I don't know why. It's a wildling custom. It's nothing, I don't see why she wouldn't be able to have one. Isla tells the wildlings that there is rebellion brewing on Lightlark, but regardless of that, they should go back to Lightlark. No, I'm going to stay here. You enjoy the war, whatever, but I'm gonna stay here out of the war. You do you though. In the same chapter, there's not a chapter break. It pretty much transitions directly to Isla's coronation on Starling, and she's super nervous walking to where she's supposed to be crowned. I literally have no idea where they are. Are they in a church, like, you know, Elsa and Frozen being crowned? Are they in a castle, like from Narnia, you know, where all the four siblings are crowned? I literally don't know. All I know is that she's walking to Oro. She's nervous. She sees him. She calms down. As king, I suppose, Oro is the one to inaugurate Isla. I don't know if that's custom or if she just chose him to inaugurate her, but he puts the crown on her head and immediately there's a rumbling. The ground cracks wide open and winged. By the way, I realized in the Lightlark video, there's these people who are winged and I kept saying winged. I don't know why. I wasn't trying to be pompous or pretentious. My brain was just like winged. Like when people say learned.
You and your mom are hillbillies. This is a house of learned doctors. You're not a doctor. You're a big, fat, curly-headed fuck.
Winged monsters, they fly through this crack in the earth and they start killing people. Everyone's using their powers to try and stop them. For some reason, it's not working. Isla tries to use hers, but she has no control over her power. And Oro isn't particularly useful because the fissure in the island has harmed him. I thought the coronation was on Starling, but I guess it's on Lightlark. Okay, they're not on Starling for Isla's coronation as Starling ruler. They are on Lightlark. And the fissure in Lightlark is causing Oro harm. But Oro's connected to the island of Lightlark. It's harming him. He's kind of like its conduit, is how they explained it in the first Lightlark. If somebody like cuts down a tree on Lightlark, does that hurt Oro? If there's pollution in the water, does that hurt Oro? So they have to be really, really green. Like they need to recycle. But they're like these, I'm just imagining pterodactyls basically. But one of their creatures gets really close to Isla and it does not attack her, try to hurt her at all. She touches it, it looks at her, screams in her face, and then turns in the direction of Nightshade. And so because they start flying in that direction, it is realized that the monsters are probably in league with Grimm, but also because the monster did not attack Isla, and it's assumed that they're working with Grimm, they think that Isla is working with Nightshade and Grimm. After the attack, the monster attack, almost all of the rulers minus Grimm meet up to discuss obviously what happened, and Cleo also. Isla still hates her, by the way, but Cleo also shows up and is able to give a name to the creatures. They are called Dreks, D-R-E-K-S. I think it's Cleo that wants to know how Isla was able to stop them, and Isla's like, I touched it. And Cleo is like mockingly like, you touched it? Isla's like, yes, bitch, I fucking touched it. Oro takes the time to ask Cleo about her decision to stay a part of Lightlark or to sever Moon Isle's connection to Lightlark. He wants to know if she will leave or not, and Cleo has yet to make up her mind. She believes that Moonling is too dependent on Lightlark, and I'm confused because I don't know where this sentiment comes from. It never showed up in the first book that people are like disgruntled about things and that they want to secede from Lightlark. Like, I'm confusion. So since Nightshade seems to be preparing to attack, Oro outright just asks Cleo if she's going to side with Nightshade or with Lightlark in the war, and she says the winning side. And then she disappears when a wave comes up and like takes her away. That's cool and all, but the image of that makes me laugh. After healing the injured, Oro and Isla, they're walking back to her room together, and she asks him if he knows what the Dreks are, like I guess really trying to figure out, you know, their origin, like what kind of creatures are they? He does not know. But they're standing in front of her room. They do a little awkward goodbye. He kisses her goodnight on the head because they're good Christians. So Isla is sleeping and she gets woken up by water like grabbing her. Sometimes it's hard to picture what's going on in certain scenes. But so in this scene, water comes up and grabs Isla out of bed and she's basically drowning. She hears people talking and assumes that they're trying to kill her because, you know, there's an active rebellion on the island at the moment. So she notices that the people who attacked her look like they're all from different realms. All the different realms, they have different colors that they wear and certain characteristics. But she notes that there's not any Starling. Now, I'm not entirely sure what happens here, but I guess someone touches Isla and the world explodes. Power erupts from Isla and she pretty much kills everybody. Isla feels bad about it. People who kill in self-defense do sometimes, like in real life, feel weird emotions where they might feel guilt and things like that. So I get that, and a lot of people are not killers. Her immediate reaction, I understand like it coming afterwards too. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know how it really works. I would understand guilt happening like in the following moments, like maybe later, like the next day or in the next few hours, but like her immediate reaction to killing people who are trying to kill her is like, I feel so sorry. Like, I'm so sad that I had to do that. But Isla runs away from wherever she is. I really don't know. She was sleeping in bed and they took her out of bed, I guess. Where they take her, I don't know. But she's running through the streets of Lightlark when a Sunling guard comes across her. I don't know how, but somebody alerts Oro. I don't know if they send a bird, a pigeon, a moth, bat signal, but they alert Oro. She knew Oro had received the news when a tidal wave of heat raged across the island. When Oro had found Isla shaking and raw-skinned, he had looked like he wanted to bring the entire island down. The very ground beneath their feet had shaken as he had said very calmly, "Who did this to you?" This is one of those things where the author, Alex Aster, when she was promoting this book, she like promoted these lines. And the thing about like, and there's this whole thing, you know, TikTok might be going away. It's back temporarily, but it might be going away. But with TikTok and book talk and everything, certain tropes and lines have become popular to the point that certain authors, and it's not just Alex Aster, I've seen a lot of authors on like Instagram and stuff promoting their books where they specifically include certain tropes or certain scenes or certain like phrasing that they know people like, and then they use it as advertising. So Alex Aster used this "Who did this to you" line as advertising. It's like she knew that she wanted to use that quote, "Who did this to you?" And so she created a scene just so she could have that sentence. Anyway, so he's like, "Who did this to you?" By the time he had ripped the abandoned house they're in an abandoned house. Girl, I don't know where they are. By the time he had ripped the abandoned house to pieces, the rebels were gone. He had ordered his guards to search the tunnels, and they had found hundreds of passages that no one officially knew existed. Now in the throne room, everyone was quiet with fear. Isla had never seen Oro so angry. The only person who dared even look at her was Soren. "Treason has been committed," Oro said, his eyes pure fire. Azul offers two of Sky Isle's best warriors, Avel and Ciel, to protect Isla because someone has a vendetta against her for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know why specifically her. What did she do? So eventually everyone leaves. It's just Isla and Oro inside the throne room. They share a moment. So it's here where Isla is like, okay, I need to train because she was attacked and didn't defend herself properly. If she knew how to use her powers properly, then she might not have been, you know, in the predicament that she ended up in. Oro is relieved that she wants to train, but he tells her like he has to take her somewhere, and he's like, you're not going to be happy about this, about who they have to speak to in order to start her training. So the next chapter opens with a man named Remlar. Now, I'm going to be totally 100% honest. I feel like the name is familiar to me, but I don't know who this man is. It feels like reading Onyx Storm where like you're just throwing names at me and I don't know who these people are. So Remlar was probably in the first book. Let's just say that he was. Remlar is able to at least begin to unravel Isla's powers. He places a hand on her forehead and then one on her heart, and she blacks out. So starting from this chapter, we will be going back and forth between the present day and the past, and I will do my best to make sure that I indicate when I'm talking about the past and the present. And then there's at some point where it really like goes back and forth. But yeah, this is where it begins. Next chapter, we'll be going to the past. So get in your DeLoreans, wait for that lightning to hit that clock. I don't know how many other Back to the Future references I can think of, but we're taking a trip to the past.
Picture it. Sicily, 1912.
So if you recall, if you don't, then watch the video summarizing Lightlark. It definitely helps a lot. Isla has something called a star stick that she uses to teleport. So she used to use it a whole bunch prior to the events of the first novel. And in this first recap of the past, we actually get to see what she was up to when she used the star stick. She did use the star stick in Lightlark, but this is when we get to see her like actually kind of getting in trouble while using it. You can also see how she met Grimm. So Isla is in Nightshade and she is trapped. She can't get herself out. She's being chased by Nightshade guards. She's like in the castle and she's unable to use her star stick. It's not working. So Isla stumbles upon what kind of seems like dancers getting ready for like a recital or something. What it really is women being prepped for romantic purposes. Into position. The women suddenly straightened into a line. One she quickly joined, she being Isla, wondering what in the world was happening. Was this a fighting legion? If so, why were they wearing dresses? Was this some sort of rehearsal? She swallowed. If it was, she would be found out momentarily. She obviously wouldn't know any lines for a play or choreography for a dance. I hope I'm chosen, a woman to her left whispered to someone who seemed to be her friend. I hope I'm chosen, she replied. This is my 4th time hoping to get noticed. It would be an honor to be part of the ruling line. Ruling line? Isla turned to the women to ask them what was happening and why they looked so excited when the door in front of them opened. He walked in. Isla froze. She knew who he was instantly. Something about the way the air moved around him, about the resonance of his step. He was the tallest man she had ever seen, 1.5 feet taller than her at least. He had relatively long black hair like spilled ink, falling across his forehead, curling around his ears. His mouth seemed set in a permanent frown. Unimpressed. He was the king of nightmares, a demon, the ruler of Nightshade. Grimm chooses Isla. They leave, go to his room, I believe. They make out. Isla's kind of into it at first because this is her first experience with a man. She's like, wow, this is interesting. And then she stabs him. So that's the end of the past memory. Back to the present. Isla wakes up and she's with Oro. He took her to the woods for whatever reason, and Remlar is not there. So Oro found her, I guess he took her to Remlar and then she passed out and then he took her to the woods. I don't know. So Isla, this segues somehow into Isla wanting a tutor for her powers. Of course, Oro is going to teach her. Her powers can be quite destructive. So in order to teach her, Oro takes her to the deserted Wild Isle. So I guess I will be doing some recaps just so that it makes sense, hopefully. But I'm probably reiterating as well. But so Lightlark is an island, and there are different isles attached to it. So that would be Moonling. Well, aside from, okay, Lightlark is all-encompassing. It is everybody, all the races of this world. But so in this world, there's, Moonlings, Sunlings, Starlings, Moonlings, Sunlings, Starlings, Nightshade, Wildling, Wildling and Nightshade. I am reiterating because I'm pretty sure like I mentioned this already, but I just want to make sure nobody's confused. We have Nightshade and Wildling. They're the only 2 of these people who, like groups of people that broke off from Lightlark. So the Isles are still like very connected. But even though the wildlings left, there's still a Wild Isle that exists, but nobody lives there anymore. That's where Isla wants everybody to go back to. I guess there is not a Night Isle, probably because there's not a good name for it. Nightshade Isle, Moon Isle, Star Isle, Sky Isle, Night Isle, Nightshade Isle, you know what I mean? So maybe that's why it doesn't exist. So Isla moves in, I guess, to the Place of Mirrors, which is the castle on the abandoned Wild Isle, to spare anybody, I guess her people, from her lack of self-control, but also just everybody and other people in general. Avel and CL also move in with her. They're like her personal bodyguards, bestowed by Azul. And the Starling girl from the first book, Ella, who was basically like, first she was kind of like a housekeeper. She becomes like that again, but I guess she's, moved up a little bit in importance. Isla's powers being awakened makes her ill. And so she has like these headaches and stuff. So Oro stays with her to take care of her. He does her hair for her. They share a cute little moment. He compliments her hair and her eyes. She raised an eyebrow at him. My eyes happen to be your favorite color. Oro paused, looking a little like he regretted starting this conversation in the first place. He stared intently at the ribbon between his fingers, and it looked almost physically painful for him to get the next few words out. No, it became my favorite after the king of Lightlark, the cold ruler of Sunling. She had heard about her entire life, was flustered. It was adorable. Isla's chest felt like it was being cracked in half, but she couldn't help but tease him. Really? She said. Please, tell me everything you like about me, slowly, in detail. Oro gave her a look that made her certain he knew she was reveling in his discomfort. She pressed her lips against another smile. Do I encompass any other favorites? Am I your favorite liar, favorite incapable ruler? Damn. Way to bring down the mood, girl. So negative. I know she's in a bad place right now, but damn. Her tone slowly became bitter because in truth, she couldn't imagine being anyone's favorite anything. Your favorite weakling who can't go a few hours without retching? Oro turned to her then. He looked her right in the eyes as he said, Isla, you are my favorite everything. Her lips had been parted with another self-deprecating and annoying statement, but she closed them. That couldn't be true. What was there to like about her? She was weak. Foolish. She looked away. Suddenly she was the one who was uncomfortable. Oro didn't lie, but she couldn't imagine anyone saying good things about her when her mind told her the opposite. I will say, so Oro doesn't lie because he can sense when other people are lying. That, okay. Other people presumably do not have that power, so how do you know he's not lying? In the first book, Oro said that he does not lie because he can tell when other people lie, I guess because of some sort of integrity. I guess it didn't really say that he can't lie. Like he just can't lie. He just doesn't lie. But he could be lying about lying. Isla says, I feel better. She lied. You can leave for a bit if you want. Obviously, he would have been able to tell that she was lying because he can tell when other people are lying. He says, is that so? She says, better than ever, actually. Right. He lightly brushed away another strand that had come loose because he was truly hopeless at tying her hair. And she knew he was also subtly checking her temperature. Well, wildling, even if I couldn't naturally tell that you're a liar, your skin is so warm you could pass for Sunling. Oro should be with a Sunling, someone more like him, someone who wasn't such a mess. Do you wish I was? Sunling? She nodded, and it didn't do anything to make her head feel better. Before he could respond, she added, do you wish I wasn't everything I am? He was quiet for a moment. Her eyes slowly began to close, suddenly heavy. Fighting against sleep was useless in this state. No, Isla, he finally said, it's the parts you don't seem to like about yourself that I love the most. Love. She wanted to accept it, savor it, clutch it, let the words swallow her whole and make her happy. But instead, she drifted off into the waiting arms of sleep. So, Isla is asleep. We're in the past again. Okay? Keep up. So, Isla is coming back from a training session with her handlers in Wildling, and Grim is in her room. He can teleport. And so he's in her room because he's there to confront her. He thinks that Isla was there to assassinate him, which is fair because he recognizes her as the wildling ruler. I don't know how. I guess they've interacted before, or maybe he just would have assumed because of her physical characteristics. Grim tries to choke Isla with his power, and he releases the grip when he realizes that as he's asking her questions, she can't talk because her trachea is being crushed by him. The Nightshade ruler's voice became eerily calm. How? He said, taking another step. Did another step. You, the word held the same poison as his look as he regarded her, splayed against the greenhouse glass like a weakling. Get in. He bent down low, eyes never leaving hers. By the time he was almost nose to nose with her, she used that fear as a cover. As she cowered beneath his shadow, she gripped the blade still in her hand. Before he could take another breath, its tip was resting just below his chin. Her nostrils flared. Her voice shook out of not just fear, but anger. Anger at herself for being so weak. Get, she said, matching his tone. Out. Something in his expression flinched at the spit flying from her mouth, from the intensity of her words. Good. Of my room. She pushed the blade into his skin for emphasis, waited to feel the heat of his blood on her hand, but before she could apply enough pressure, he vanished. She collapsed fully against the floor, shaking like a child, wondering how the nightshade seemed to have the same portaling ability as her star stick. Okay, so we're back in the present. Isla begins her training, and her test is to make a rock move because she has, nature powers. She gets frustrated because her powers are not coming to her easily. So Oral tells her she just needs to keep at it, keep practicing, and her powers and her mastery over it, her ability to use them, will come to her soon. But Isla is feeling pressure of Grimm as a threat. I guess in the beginning with these memories, she is not remembering him in the best light because he's been aggressive so far in each memory. So Isla is like trying to speed run it, and Oro, is telling her it'll take time, and that does not make her happy. She's like, you don't understand. She tells him that you don't understand. And Oro goes, well, I killed somebody. So Oro can turn things into gold. Think Midas touch. So when he was a kid, he turned someone like a attendant, servant, whatever, into solid gold. His parents were just happy that, he was demonstrating such a strong ability. It's like is it a flare? I guess it is. I don't really know. I guess it's a power that not all... Okay, I think actually in the first book she said some sunlings had the power to do that, but not everybody. So I guess he's just like, that's a special power, but he still has a flare, which is like the special power rulers have that, what is it called? It's a special power rulers have that, why am I blanking? It's a special powers rulers just have. So he can tell when people are lying. That's the flare. He can also like turn things into gold, which is a special power that some sunlings can have, but it seems like nobody else has that except for him. So Oro says that training helped a lot with him learning to control his powers, also his friends. And Isla's like, you have friends? So we've been dating, we're falling in love. We don't even know that this man has friends. But also she's been around him for like a while, and like I would think his friends would have shown up by now. It's not a thing where like his friends are off traveling, whatever, maybe they didn't have the ability to like meet, maybe she didn't have the ability to meet all of his friends, and like, sure, this world, like the scope of this world, it does not feel very big to me. Actually, when I think about it, I think of like video games, like a video game like map. I mean, there's open worlds that are huge. Like when I think of like Breath of the Wild, that feels like a big world. But then when I think of like, so Skyward Sword, there's, when you go down, when you leave the little floating island, there's a whole world. But when you're up there, it's not very big. Like you can just walk around the island, floating island. That's what I think of when I think of Lightlark. And then they have, these offshoots of isles, but when I think about them, I don't think of them as being very big. And then actually when I think of like Wildling and Nightshade, because they're their own separate like entities and countries, I actually do think of them as much bigger. But for like obviously the first Lightlark book, they're on Lightlark majority of the time. I feel like you would have run into these people at some point. This reminds me of like A Court of Mist and Fury, where Feyre did not know that, well, Feyre didn't have the opportunity to know that Rhysand had friends, because he was trapped under a mountain, and met them after a lot of events and circumstances, but eventually met them. But like it makes sense why they were like parted and not. Does it make sense though? Well, I don't know. Okay, I don't know. And now I'm just confusing myself more with another book. Let me just keep talking about this because so Isla finally moves the rock. She trains all day every day. One day Oro blindfolds. One day Oro blindfolds Isla. He starts pelting her with rocks. I would give anybody money to like actually see that in real life. So she gets mad and loses control of her power and shapes blades out of tree branches, and then she's like, oh my god, I'm so dangerous, I could have hurt you. But Oro's like, it's fine, he's still very powerful. Yet Oro is like, well, this is just a demonstration of you need to get control of your abilities. You can't let your emotions dictate your powers. Being super emotional can make your powers stronger, but you lose focus, is his argument. I'm going to come back because I have to start logging in for work.
Later.
The next chapter is titled Enya. Not that Enya. So we're introduced to this character because Isla wants to have someone who can help her out with her realm. They are completely inept, or so Isla thinks. Enya, she's one of Oro's greatest friends, and she's being tasked by Oro to help. Enya, Isla, Oro, and a bunch of volunteers go to Wildling, where they give out supplies. So they do it for so long that Isla gets so tired and she falls asleep. Oro flies her back to her old room in Wildling, the refurbished like greenhouse kind of thing. Isla panics because she used to be trapped in there, or so she feels like she was. Really, she wasn't. She really wasn't. It wasn't like a Rapunzel tangled situation. She was free to leave. Like, I mean, her handlers didn't give her that freedom, but she had the star stick for as long as she could remember, as long as I can remember, because I don't remember that much. But she was always like escaping. And I think there was like a part in her little greenhouse thing where like the window was kind of messed up, so she could easily slip in and slip out. So she wasn't trapped. Like, she was able to get out. I mean, I understand feeling stifled because she was being controlled by these two women, but like, that's different than actually being physically trapped. She was not physically trapped. Oro is there when Isla wakes up and she admires how hot he is. Isla tries to seduce him, but Oro continues to blue ball himself. Oro and Isla continue to train. Isla is so fed up with herself and just asks Oro to like take her powers, but Oro reassures her that she is the most powerful person in this whole entire world that Lightlark exists in, because she was the one to break the curses. Isla manages to bloom a rose in her hand. She continues to work on building her confidence with Oro's reassurance. She wakes up like the next morning after the rose, I guess, and goes running through the woods. So as she goes running through the woods, she's like exhilarated, and the like ground is rising as she runs. Like, she's really excited. I think one thing I did forget to mention is that Isla has been seeing visions of Grimm. I think I did mention that at least she's had like a vision or two of him, heard his voice, but like she's actually seeing him. And so it's here in the scene that she's like running up her little earth steps, her dirt steps. She sees him, and this image of him breaks her focus. So she ends up like her power with whatever she's doing with the earth, it disconnects. She ends up falling to the ground, falling towards the ground, but Avel and CL are there to catch her. They are always there, except when they're not. Like, they're kind of there conveniently. Sometimes it feels like that they're not there that often, but like they're there when they're important. So in the next chapter, Isla is talking to a woman named Ren. Ren was mentioned earlier in the book, this book, but I didn't mention her because she was not really that important. Ren is not super important. She's really just like a character to speak for the other wildlings. She's sort of a mouthpiece for the wildlings. Ren and Isla end up having a conversation about bonded companions, or the bonded, which are animal companions. They decide to do a ceremony with Isla. For some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason Isla is concerned about the size of her animal companion. She hopes that her bonded will be like a bug or something small, something that she doesn't have to worry about like carrying around, I guess. Honestly, I guess I would need their own space, but it's not that inconvenient to have a large animal. I don't think so. I mean, if you had like a large animal, there'd be places to put them. I don't know why she's worried about that. And she's like a literal, like she's a ruler of a like country. She shouldn't really worry about where she would put this thing. But so Ren tells her that her bonded will not be like a bug or a small animal because she's a ruler, and so rulers have big, strong, powerful animals. Honestly, though, there are a lot of bugs. I'm not a bug person, but there are some bugs that are really powerful. And you have to think too, like ants, for example. Ants are very small. They can carry like an X amount of weight compared to their body size. It's not necessarily something a human can do, even though we're bigger animals. There's this wasp that I learned about I took an anthropology of the undead class, which literally, if I could go back to school and get like a second degree, I would absolutely study anthropology. Anyway, so there's this wasp called the jewel wasp. Jewel wasps, they inject their venom into cockroaches. They turn the cockroaches into like basically zombies. They can get them to move and everything to their little den, and they implant like their children within like a little egg within the larva into the cockroach, and then from the cockroach the wasp baby comes out. It's kind of wild. Nature is so cool and weird. Anyway, so Isla's companion is expected to be majestic and mighty. There's a break in the chapter, and honestly there's not really like, I would say there's not quite seamless transitions. There's a break in the chapter and we're immediately at the ceremony. Isla and some wildlings. Of course, Ren has to be there. She's our representative for the wildlings. They all wade into the water with Isla, but eventually they just leave her out there. So wildlings, regular wildlings, this is the ceremony. They have to catch their bonded. But I guess for the ruler, they're not just like catching them. It's not like chasing after a bunny, trying to catch a pig, trying to snatch up a chicken. She has to hunt. Would have been good to mention that before the ceremony. Isla takes a bow and arrow into the woods. She has to shoot and this is instructions from Ren, she has to shoot her bonded, which seems like a really weird way to bond with an animal. That's my dog, by the way, if you want to play. This is my bonded. You can't even see her, but I actually posted a picture of her. My literal child. Bondeds are supposed to choose their person. By going into the woods with an arrow, wouldn't you like technically be choosing her bonded? Isla spots a wolf and tries to shoot it, but it runs away. She's like, dang, what if that was my last chance? But then a gigantic spider walks past. Honestly, at that point, I would have been like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I don't need a bonded. I don't dislike spiders, actually, to be honest. A gigantic spider. I don't need a gigantic spider. No, thank you. After the spider, Isla spots a stag with branches for, it says horns, but I do think the author meant antlers. So the stag approaches Isla, but stops because of what is behind her. So there is a huge bear. Commence bear attack. Isla tries to use her arrow. The bear breaks the arrow, so all she can do is run. She runs away. Isla climbs up a tree and the bear comes after her. It slashes at her calf, so her leg is injured. And at this point, she's out of options, but lo and behold, a black leopard comes out of the shadows and saves her. The black leopard, it puts her on its back and jumps down. Then it goes to the broken arrow and basically tells her to stab it. So she does that, and then it puts her back on his back, and they take off into the night, living happily ever after. So they go to the village, and Ren's like, oh snap, I kind of wondered if this would happen, but I wasn't sure. And Isla's like, what do you mean? The black leopard was Isla's mother's bonded. His name is Link, so woo, legacy. I have an issue with visualizing certain things in my mind. Size and distance, I do not have a real concept for. If somebody tells me, maybe it's because I'm not very good at math, so maybe that's why. I cannot visualize how big Lynx is. It's kind of similar to, it's kind of the same thing with like Fourth Wing and stuff, when the big dragon, the big black dragon Tarn is mentioned. I have a hard time imagining how big he is. He's supposed to be huge, but like how big is huge? But anyway, so Lynx is big enough for a person to ride. He's too big to enter through the doors of the palace on Wildling. Palace doors can be quite big, so it kind of depends on the architecture, but depending on how large the doorway is and how big Lynx is, I feel like he could fit, but I don't know. Maybe they're really small palace doors. According to the narrator, Isla doesn't reach the top of Lynx's leg. So, I mean, Isla seems like she could be quite short. She's obviously not more than like 6 feet. Maybe the leopard's leg is like 6 feet. Maybe the rest of the leopard is 6 feet. So in total, the leopard could maybe be 12 feet. So a doorway could be 12 feet. But Lynx is too big to fit through the door? Why and how? But anyway, so Isla has to portal Lynx from in and out of the palace. I honestly feel like it could have just been easier for the author and everything just to have the door be a really, really big ass doorway. But Isla takes Lynx back to the castle and he curls up in the corner of her room. He shakes the ground when he lays down. So he must be pretty big. I don't know. Next morning, Isla portals Oro to her realm and introduces him to Lynx. Lynx is annoyed and bothered by Isla, but he seems to like Oro. Lynx has a choice to go back to Lightlark with Isla or to stay in Wildling. He stays in Wildling because there's more place for him to like run and stuff. So Isla returns to Lightlark with Oro and Azul. I wrote that, I guess he was, I don't know where he was, but he's tagging along too. There's some Skyling guards who are waiting for them on Lightlark. The rebels that have been planning to revolt against Lightlark for some reason were spotted with some activity, and there's been whispers coming from Star Isle. So the rebels have not been able to be apprehended because they disappeared underground. So there's crypts underneath either Star Isle or Lightlark that no one except starlings apparently know about. I don't know. I'm just going to read you the passage. The rebels were spotted, he said. Who said? Somebody said. Isla's chest tightened, remembering the pain of that night being swept away under the water so helpless. Never again. She could use her wildling power now. She might not be invisible, but at least she had a fighting chance. She also wasn't alone. Ciel and Avel moved to her sides immediately. Where exactly? Oro demanded. Their whispers were heard by our spies coming from Star Isle. We tracked them down from the sky, but they just vanished underground. We found more tunnels, but they all had dead ends. Ella spoke from her place at the back of the throne room. It's true, her attendant said. I saw them for a moment. There are starlings among them, I'm almost certain. Who? Oro demanded. Isla remembered his threat. He would string any of them up across the Bay of Teeth. Give me names. Ella did not hesitate. I didn't recognize anyone specifically. They wore masks. They must have starlings among them, though, because no one else knows about the tunnels in the crypts. Oro frowned. Crypts? They were built during the curses, to house the many dead and hide us from the rest of the island. Anger curled in Isla's stomach as she remembered hearing about the abuse of the starlings. We kept them a secret because of that. They're the only reason some of us are still alive, and they're the only way to get past the creatures that took over the east side of Star Isle. Here, Ella, the starling girl who is now Isla's assistant, she explains that the crypts are for the dead, but they're also pathways to avoid monsters. Isla asks for more information about, like, what are these monsters, but Ella doesn't really explain. She just says monsters, and Isla's like, damn, she didn't actually say like she completely forgot she's the ruler of a whole nother realm, but it's like she just kind of wasn't thinking about them, and then she's like, dang, they have monsters? Oh wait, like I am the ruler, maybe I should deal with that. So Isla decides to go to Star Isle, and Oro volunteers to go with her, but Isla wants to go alone, though not alone, because Avel and Ciel are always there, watching and waiting in the shadows. It's kind of like with, again, is it kind of like this with like A Court of Thorns and Roses, when Rhysand, he has like those two women who happen to be dark-skinned women who are like servants, and they don't really show up very much. They're just kind of like there, but they're kind of always like watching and waiting, and they're kind of like spies. Anyway, it kind of reminds me of that. It's like they're there, but like these people of Ciel, they're there, but they're not there. Isla imagined Oro would demand to speak to every starling and interrogate them over any information about the rebels. That wasn't what they needed. That wasn't the way Isla wanted to first address her new people. Oro nodded, but he didn't look happy in the slightest. He turned to Azul. Did your spies hear anything else about the rebels? Has anyone else been attacked? Threatened? Azul shook his head. No one else. That couldn't be true. Why only target her? If what Ella said was correct, that there must be starlings among the rebels, that didn't make sense. They had hurt her. They could have killed her, which would have led to the deaths of all wildlings and starlings. Something wasn't adding up. In general, why would they want to kill any of the rulers? Because whatever. Anyway, Isla caught up with Ella before she left the mainland castle. She felt awkward asking her these questions, but she had to know. Are the starlings... Are they disappointed that I'm their ruler now? Are they angry that I still haven't visited? No, they know you were attacked and that you've been busy since. Isla frowned. They must resent me, though. They must. Ella laughed. Isla didn't think she had ever seen the starling laugh before. Isla, she said softly, all of us grew up accepting that our lives would be short and likely miserable. Few of us had any dreams or goals or hope. You gave us a chance to live. To most of us, you are a god, a savior. As she walked back to her room to change into her training clothes, Isla repeated the words she had told herself in the wildling Newland woods. She was strong. She was the ruler. I am a god. I'm a savior. So Isla is getting dressed, and in the mirror she sees Grim. She spun around and shot her arm out. A branch from the tree of her room snapped off, then sharpened into a blade. It stabbed right through the room, but it was empty. So Isla gets to Star Isle and it looks like shit. Like, it looks real bad. Like, they don't have homes. They're living in camps and stuff. So Maren meets Isla at a dilapidated like palace with Maren has a cousin named Cinder who is like Maren but smaller. So Isla makes sure to check with Maren that the rebels have not hurt anyone. Honestly, it seems like they've not hurt anybody except Isla. But so Isla goes into the like Starling castle, and every Starling she encounters is incredibly young because before the curses were broken, Starlings died after the age of 25. They could not live past the age of 25. Most of these Starlings are children, with only a few who are around Isla's age, so that would be early to mid 20s, mostly early 20s. So Isla openly admits to everybody that she does not know what she is doing. That would be so comforting to hear from the leader of my country. I don't really know what I'm doing, you know, but I'm gonna wing it. Like, you couldn't just lie a little bit, like just pretend like you know what you're doing. Cinder pipes up and she's like, you're fine that you don't know what you're doing because none of us know what we're doing. Don't nobody know what they're doing. Isla asks how many Starlings are left on Star Isle. The framing of that question, like how many Starlings are left on Star Isle, I mean, I guess that means how many have died. Like how many are not currently living. It kind of makes it seem like, you know, maybe some have left. I think it's more like how many have died. There's only like a few hundred Starlings left, which is crazy. There's definitely some incest going on in Star Isle unless they venture out to have relations with sunlings, moonlings, but I don't think they are because it doesn't really seem like, I think it's been mentioned that the different lings plus the nightshades, they don't really have interracial relations. There's not a lot of swirl going on in Lightlark. So anyway, Isla asks everyone where they're living and if it's in the palace. I would assume that the palace is very large, enough to fit, you know, like a couple hundred people. You know, if you think about like the Palace of Versailles, what does it have, like 1,000 rooms or something? Let's see. Palace of Versailles. Yeah, it has like 2,300 rooms. So depending on how large the Star Isle Palace is, everybody in this isle, every Starling could live in the palace. However, it's mostly the rich nobles who are living in the palace, to be honest. And I think it would have been, I'm just, if I were writing this, I'm not, it doesn't matter, but just like, I think it'd be interesting to explore a world where people previously did not live past the age of 25. I mean, I think it could go one of two ways. I think you could have people who are obsessed with wealth because they want to pass it down to their children to make sure that they're taken care of before they die. Or you could have a population of people who are not really concerned with wealth because they're gonna die young. Just one thing to think about. Nobody cares for my input because the book is published already. It doesn't matter. But, you know, it's like, why are there even like nobles even really dictating who lives where? Like, I feel like people wouldn't care that much in a society like this, or maybe they would, I don't know. So Isla says, your ruler was my friend, I thought. I took her power to save this realm. She lifted her palms. I didn't want to be your ruler, so comforting, but I will be what you need me to be, she said, surprising herself with her words. Right now, things are difficult. Starlings died in the attack of the Drex. We are preparing for the possibility that it was one of potential future Nightshade attacks. Rebels were spotted just yesterday. I'm here for you now, and together we will navigate this new chapter. Your ruler's death will not be a waste. Tell me what you need. There were whispers. No one spoke up, though not for a minute. Then Maren said, what we need most is for you to stay alive. You gave us a chance at a long life. We intend on using it. Isla asked Ella to stay behind and write a list of any immediate grievances and necessities. She figured the Starlings would be more comfortable telling someone familiar with what they needed. Maren and the man chewing the reed between his teeth. Leo, oh yeah, there's a dude. FYI. I don't think he's really that important either. Led her to where they lived. The rest of them live like in camps. And the ones who don't live in the palace. So Maren asks Isla what the king is like, and Isla describes him as brooding, and then winks at Cinder because apparently Isla has never been around a child before. It's also just like a weird interaction between the two. Like that's a weird interaction. Somebody's like two people, two grown-ups are walking together, and then there's a little child with them. And one of them, I mean, I'm just basically reenacting, I'm recapping what happened, but like, just really imagine it, really think about it. They're walking, two like 20-year-olds, and one of them is like, how's that dude that you've been hanging out with? What's he like? And the other person's like, brooding, and she looks at the child. What? Marin, Leo, the guy named Leo, who's really, does he even come up that much? I don't think so. I think maybe they're kind of like a little makeshift family, Marin, Leo, and Cinder. So Marin, Leo, Cinder, Isla, they arrive in an assembly hall that the rest of the starlings are living in. Isla is appalled, and she wonders why they're not living in the palace. There's a class disparity thing, but really, so the people are not, the rest of the non-nobles, they're not living in the palace because the nobles belong there. Also, there's ghosts, apparently. Not like ghosts are not mentioned in this series, though. There was one mentioned in the first book, a specter. Don't really know the significance of these ghosts, but there's ghosts that they don't want to be around. They also don't want to go to other parts of the island, so like, set up housing in other parts because monsters are on the rest of the island, or Isle Island. They're the same thing, right? Period. I'm not a geographist. Geographer. A geographist. So Isla gets very mad seeing these conditions. Personally, of course I would too. I would immediately try to figure out how to get these people into homes. She should have the ability to do that. She thinks that Celeste/Aurora, the former Starling ruler, her former bestie who turned out to be a traitor, she then realized that she knew about this but did not do anything about it. My question is though, Isla met Celeste/Aurora by portaling herself with a star stick to Star Isle, so she had to have seen the poverty. She walks onto this isle and immediately can tell that they're not doing great. So she didn't realize that before? I don't know, I just don't think she's very observant. Isla goes back to her room in the Wildling Palace, back to Oro, and tells him everything that's happening, or the whole situation with Star Isle. He's worried about her because she's not sleeping very often. She took a step toward him and she changed the subject. I missed you the last few days, she said, and it was the truth. Spending time with the wildlings was important, but she had started to expect Oro's presence. He was always there for her, so patient when they practiced. Even now he recognized the signs that she wasn't fine when no one else did. He knew her. Isla wanted to know him. Wink, wink. Eyebrow raised. I miss you too, Oro said, looking surprised the words had fallen out of his mouth. He frowned, clearly frustrated that she had shifted the conversation. She stared at his mouth. That mouth. How was it possible that they both knew they loved each other, yet they hadn't so much as kissed? Her heart began beating unsteadily. She wanted to know what it was like to touch him. She wanted to feel his heat against her bare body as they explored each other's every inch in the dark. Every inch in the dark. Before she could say or do any of the things that had raced across her mind, Oro pressed his lips against the top of her head, said, "You need to rest," and left. I don't know why they miss each other anyway. He was in the chapter before this one, so I don't know how much time they're actually like not spending with each other. I mean, I get if you're like really in love, not being together for like even half a day, you might miss them, which like, go off to work, come back home, like I missed you today, I missed you too. But I don't know, just like for a book, because this isn't real life, it's a book, so like there's not time to actually miss them being together. They're just like together quite a lot. Shit, I just put my chair down on accident. My bad. That scared me a little bit. Anyway, so Isla falls asleep and she goes to the pass again. Isla travels to Grimm's room after he tried to kill her. And after she tried to stab him. No, she did stab him actually. After she stabbed him, after he tried to kill her, she's in his room again. Here's him walking with another man. And they're talking strategy. What kind of strategy? I don't know. Just strategy. Isla hides in the bathroom. She can't portal away because her star stick is not working yet again. So Grimm comes into the bathroom. He starts undressing. Isla's like, damn. And then he turns on the water. and she's inside the shower. So Isla is there because she has brought Grim wildling healing elixir to fix the stab wound. Grim is like, no, please leave. But Isla persists, like, what can I do for you? What can I get you? Grim doesn't want anything. So Isla's like, fight me, bro. Fight me. You don't want anything? Fight me. So she thinks that this is how they're going to resolve their issues. Grim is like, fine, whatever. We'll have a duel. It'll be over in a minute. They travel to Wildling Realm because Isla's weapons are in her room. She gets her weapons. They fight in the woods in Wild Isle. No, not Wild Isle. Sorry. Wild Isle is deserted. The Wildling Newland that is not attached to Lightlark. So Grim is really good, as one would expect from a 500-year-old warrior. Isla's not doing too bad, but she's also clearly not going to be easily able to defeat him. So she tries to trick him. She gets him to step into bog sand, which is essentially quicksand. Grim could get out of the sand by teleporting, but he doesn't because I think they had agreed to not use their powers for the duel. So while stuck in the sand, I think they agreed to use her powers because remember, like, at this time she did not have her powers. So he pulls her on top of him while his feet and stuff are stuck in the sand. He has his blade like pointed at her heart, like, but doesn't like push it in, like holds her, I think, up enough where, you know, he's not killing her, but it's a warning, like, I could have killed you. I'm not going to, but I could have killed you. So he orders Isla to never return to his lands ever again and vanishes. Isla wakes up from this vision in the past upset because Grim and Isla had a duel in Lightlark and she beat him. And so she realizes, like, oh, he could have beat me. He let me win. So she's mad about that. At this point, Isla is determined to get Grim out of her mind, and her way to do that is to seduce Oro, because to get over a guy, they gotta get under a guy. Right in, cowgirl. So Isla is in lingerie, and Oro is very clearly attracted to her. Regardless of all of this, he is making no moves to actually be with her in the way that Isla wants so desperately. And she's like, well, do you even find me attractive? Like, she's really seriously doubting him even really liking her, but he said that he loved her. So he does like, maybe she thinks he loves her in a platonic way. I don't see how. Homegirl is confused. So Oro says, to confirm, like, I'm very attracted to you. He says, every time I see you, I think the gods must play favorites. Every time you're near me, I am overcome with the urge to bed you, to have you again and again. I want to devour every inch of you until you're all I taste, until you are shaking with pleasure in my arms. That is what I want. She glanced down, and the evidence of his want was clear. It made her heart race to an impossible speed. With shaking hands, she unbuttoned the clasp of her top until it dropped. He looked at her like he wanted to spend a week with her locked in this room. But he only closed his eyes and said, Isla, I want everything with you, but not now. Why not? She asked, tears hot behind her eyes. She willed them not to fall, knowing she looked pathetic enough already. His expression softened. You're struggling, love. He took her hand. I feel like I'm watching you fade, day by day, and I don't know what to do. He surprised her by going down on one knee. JK. His gaze never leaving hers. The king of Lightlark was kneeling before her. It's giving Rhysand kneeling before favorite. Do people just, like, rip things out of that book? Like, yes. Tell me how to help you. I'll do anything. Give you anything. Just tell me. Okay. So, according to my notes, which I wrote, I don't even know how long ago, but I included this little excerpt because Oro says gods, plural. So in the first book, there was a monastery, which implies a religion, and then Oro said gods, meaning there's a pantheon, but they never have mentioned any gods. Like, they don't have any names. I think there might be a name at some point. Was there a name? Was it here? I don't think there was. Am I confusing it with another book? I probably am. Gods are mentioned so much in a lot of, like, fantasy series, especially as of recent, but, like, they don't actually, like nobody's like that religious. And especially in this series, people aren't really like doing rituals to honor gods. There's not like special holidays. There's not priestesses. Like, at least in the Court of Thorns and Roses like series, you know, there are priestesses. There is some mentions of religion where, you know, it seems like people are actually, they believe in some sort of deity. But here it's like, I guess they do, but like they don't really talk about it at all, which is not quite usual because, you know, in actual religious societies, I mean, I feel like I can't go anywhere without being reminded of religion at all, especially living in the South. And if you drive through certain places, like I know I'm in the boonies if I see a whole bunch of choose life, are you pregnant and struggling, call us billboards, you know what I mean? Or like, who do you choose, heaven or hell? Like, text us if you want to go to heaven. When you live in a society where people practice a religion, there's going to be constant reminders of it everywhere. And even if you're not religious, it's still everywhere. So if a religion is going to be included, it should be more like prominent, in my opinion. So Isla admits that her memories of Grimm and everything are starting to come back, and that's part of why she hasn't been sleeping. Doesn't want to, because when she's been sleeping, she's been going to the past in her mind. So Oro suggests he move out of his room and Isla moves into his room because, actual quote from the book, it's the most protected place in the castle. There might be like wards or something on the room, potentially. It's never really mentioned, but so whatever is special about Oro's room, Isla sleeps peacefully through the night finally, and during her next training, she's in such a good mood. During this or maybe another training, she's so happy that she tells Oro she loves him, and then they make out. And then Oro tells her he loves her too, even though I think he already said that he loves her. It is stated in the narration that love has made Isla bold, and so she wants to host a holiday called Copia, which is a wildling celebration of abundance, like cornucopia. Isla suggests to use Wild Isle, the deserted Wild Isle, and wants to show the wildlings like new growth on the Isle to try and convince them to move back. So Isla and Oro, they go to Wild Isle and they grow vegetation together because, again, everything is dead. Oro is able to use Isla's power because he loves her, and Isla can feel it when he uses her power, and it's such an intimate experience that she asks him to stay with her. Isla went to the bathroom to change. She wore what she had been wearing to bed every day for the last week or so, one of Oro's shirts. They all smelled like summer and soap and faintly of citrus. She didn't even really think about it until she stepped out of the bathroom and Oro looked at her as if she had stepped out naked. He looked almost horrified. I am sorry. She moved one foot back into the bathroom. The marble was cold beneath her feet. Everything was cold compared to him. I found them in your room. I didn't think you'd mind. I can change. Oro laughed. He laughed. His hand slid slowly down his face, then curved to the back of his neck. His voice was dark as midnight as he said, "Don't you dare. Don't you dare wear anything else." She had never heard him so possessive before. It made the bottom of her spine curl. Made her think about them in the bed and the fact that they would soon be in it together. The bottom of her spine curled? That sounds like a medical problem. Oro fingers Isla. I do wonder how his skills compare to Grimm, because Grimm did the exact same. I want to know. I just want to remind everybody that fingering is sex. Oro is taking it slow for really no reason. And this happens a lot in books where it's like, we're not going to have penetrative sex, but we're gonna like do some oral, we're gonna like make out, I'm gonna finger you. That's sex. I just want to say that it's still sex. Copia happens and Cleo is there surprisingly. Everything is going pretty well at this little celebration. Isla shows the wildlings that they can regrow Wild Isle and return to it, reassuring everybody. As she's showing everybody the Isle and the new vegetation, she's like, see, look, everything's growing, but then suddenly everything decays, but oh snap, wait a minute, no it didn't, that was an illusion. Isla remembered Grimm's demonstration of power at the Centennial, an illusion. This was an illusion. Then his voice was in her head. It was all in their heads. Consider this a warning, it said, a glimpse at the future. You have 1 month to vacate the island. In 30 days, I am coming to destroy it. Shouts, screams, nothing will be left. You can choose to flee to your new lands or join me in a new future. The choice is simple. Fighting is futile. The ruin coming is inevitable. Isla travels to Moon Isle with Avel and Ciel to negotiate with Cleo to get her to stay on Lightlark. Every ruler, and excluding Nightshade, is invited to, or not even invited, they're summoned to meet and discuss Grimm's upcoming attack. Even Cleo shows up, so they have their little discussion, and then later after that night, Cleo visits Isla, I'm assuming in the palace in Lightlark, so Oro's palace, and it tells Isla the story of her son. Isla is shocked by this news because when the rulers were attending the centennial, they were not supposed to have heirs, and this is something that was like a rule for the centennial. Because before the cure to the curses was discovered, pretty much like accidentally, killing their entire line, which means killing, heirs, or just like stopping that bloodline. And so, of course, obviously, if there's an heir, then there's somebody who can continue with the powers, like the power transfers, or it's like implied, it's not explicitly stated that the power transfers, but because an heir is not allowed to be had by the rulers, or was not allowed to be had by the rulers, it's implied powers transfer, and so they were not allowed to have children, but Cleo did. She had a son, but her son was killed when the Moonling curse, when it started. Cleo actually missed the 4th centennial because she had an heir, so she was trying to follow the rules. So she initially only had an heir for the good of her realm to protect her people, but then she ended up, like, it was duty, but she ended up actually loving her son. And according to Cleo, it is her love for him that she's going to help Isla. So she tells Isla that the Oracle is awake. She says the Oracle has something to tell Isla. The next day, Isla tells Oro what Cleo said, and they go and see the Oracle. But on their way to see the Oracle, Azul, Avel, and Ciel stop them in their tracks, and they're like, you gotta come and see this shit. So, Moonlings and their fleet, if you remember in Lightlark, they were building up ships for no apparent reason, really. They're just building ships. But now that the curses are broken, they're able to actually use them, because the weakness for Moonlings was they would die on a full moon. They would be drowned by the water, like the water would seek them out to kill them. So now they can actually use their boats. As they're leaving, and as Azul, Avel, Ciel, Oro, Isla, they're observing Moonlings and Cleo leaving, Azul calls it fleeing, meaning he thinks that they're afraid of Grimm and the attack, but Soren appears out of the shadows, not literally, but he just appears. Don't know where he was standing, but he says no, they're not fleeing, they're going to join Nightshade. After this, Oro and Isla finally get to the Oracle, and it's not much. I wrote it's really a lot of nothing. She tells Isla that the key to knowing what to do in the face of Grimm's threat is to continue to get her memories back. So she goes back to Remlar and has him force her to start recalling things. So Isla is in a market, and again, these before events are leading up to the centennial, and it kind of seems like it happened many years ago, but really it was only a couple months before the centennial was about to happen. So really, Grimm and Isla only had, like, it seemed like they had this years-long romance. At least that was kind of like the impression when reading Lightlark, but they had only known each other for a couple of months. Fell in love in kind of a short amount of time, and then he took her memories away, and then, that's the beginning of Lightlark. Isla is, because this is before the centennial, Isla is looking for gloves made of skin that Celeste wanted to have to help find the Bondbreaker. The market Isla is at is a Nightshade market, and so they sell shady stuff. Nightshades are, for some reason, just the bad area, and every Nightshade is weird and aggressive and likes dark, creepy things. So Nightshades at this time, because it's before the curses were broken, they could not be out in night. That was their, their Nightshades. Their strength is night, darkness, but they were cursed to have night be their weakness, so they can only function and operate during the day. So the market is only active during the daytime, even though it's more fitting of a nighttime kind of atmosphere. The night market smelled of rotting flesh and boiled blood. Her black hood drooped so low it almost obstructed her vision as she wove through the crowds. No one paid any attention to her. She was the least interesting thing in the market. One stand exclusively sold teeth. There were barrels of them, most looking distinctly human. So along with these super other spooky, dark, and creepy things, Isla hears someone selling Nighbane, which Isla has never heard of. You know, the seller tries to get Isla to buy Nighbane, kind of tries to push it on her, but she just walks past him and keeps moving. So Isla goes into an alleyway and gets snatched up. Some creepy dude wants to cut off her hair and sell it because she's wildling hair is apparently a hot commodity. Isla's attacker tries to stab her, but Isla stabs him because this girl is stab happy. Isla takes off and the attackers chase after her. Then there's guards that chase after her. Eventually she runs into Grim and he's like, oh my god, it's you again. Isla's not supposed to be in Nightshade. That was their deal after their duel, but she's there. And he's like, so Grim has Isla imprisoned and shackled, and he goes to visit her while she's in the dungeons because he has a favor to ask of her. I believe we might be able to help each other, Grim said. Shock rendered her silent. We are looking for the same thing. Isla frowned. You're looking for skin gloves? He looked at her strangely. No, you are looking for a way to survive the Centennial, are you not? Of course she was. She didn't say a thing. I have a deal for you then. A deal? He nodded. I'm looking for a sword. I believe you can help me get it. What sword? And why would he possibly think she could help him? A powerful one that very few people know exist, was all he said. What exactly does it do? What does it look like? He bared his teeth. Do you think I'll tell you so you can rush off and try to find it yourself? I wouldn't do that. That was exactly what she was planning to do. So I help you get the sword. What do I get out of it? Grim looked pointedly at the bars. For starters, you wouldn't freeze to death in this cell in that flimsy dress. Isla had dropped her arms, but she covered her chest again. And if you can help me, I will not only agree not to kill you at the Centennial, but I'll also be your ally. You've decided to attend? Did he not just say that he's finding a way to survive the Centennial? Isla don't be listening. Like, she really don't be listening, this girl. So Isla agrees to help Grim find the sword, because if not, he will leave her to die in the dungeons, so she has no way of getting out. For a second, she doubts helping him, and I don't know why, because at this point, he was not all that fond of her. Like, he was gonna kill her. He was gonna let her die. I don't think he didn't really care one way or the other. But after this chapter ends, we're back in the present with Isla telling Oro about the memory and the sword. Oro has his people search the libraries and archives for anything that might mention an important sword. But in the meantime, Isla knows that getting more of her memories back will be the most beneficial. So Isla ends up talking with her people, the wildlings, and even though they don't really have any ties to Lightlark anymore, they don't live there, they don't live on Wild Isle attached to Lightlark. There's no wildlings in Lightlark aside from Isla. They're not particularly looked on fondly by other people in Lightlark. Despite all of this, they agree to help in the war and defend Lightlark from Grim. Those who don't volunteer to fight or who don't want to fight are tasked with making healing elixirs. Isla meets with Lynx because he's still living on Wild Isle, or oh my god, not Wild Isle, the Wildling Newland. It's so confusing. I wish they would have kind of more distinct names. So Lynx has been grumpy with her, doesn't seem particularly fond of her, but in this instance he finally starts to show her some affection, and she's like, my bonded finally seems to like me. Maybe this means I'm a true wildling now. So she goes to try and open the vault, and it does not open because of course it doesn't. That would taint the mystery. So something eventful does happen though, at least, where she gets a vision of the Drex and concludes that Grim has the use of the Drex, which I thought we were already kind of leading to that conclusion. So Oro is having special weapons made from a type of ore that is used to make weapons that could cut through anything, because they need that. The Drex are like nearly impenetrable to cut, so they need to make special weapons. I might have already mentioned this, I don't know, but they need to make special weapons from the special ore to be able to actually penetrate the Drex skin. Isla is like, who's looking for the ore? It's a time of war. I need y'all to hurry up on making these weapons. So Oro's like, yeah, about that, it's time for you to meet my other friends. We already know about Enya, but we're introduced to two new men. The much larger of the two was a moonling. He had brown skin and a shock of white hair. His eyes were bright blue, framed by thick dark lashes. He wore a sleeveless white tunic and had the most muscled arms she had ever seen. The other was Skyling. He was tall, though still shorter than the moonling, and lean. He had dark hair that tinted blue in the light, pale skin, and sharp cheekbones. He narrowed his eyes at Isla and said, "So, you're the reason Oro doesn't see us anymore." Enya gave him a look. "No, the reason he doesn't see us anymore is because the last time we got together, you called him an uptight wretch and asked when the last time he bedded someone was." So the moonling is named Calder and the Skyling's name is Zed. Calder beamed, pleased to finally meet you. Isla took the hand he offered, her fingers laughably small next to his, and smiled weakly. She shook her head. "I don't understand. I thought all moonlings were like Cleo." She shrugged a shoulder. I think Isla is racist. I think everyone in this world is prejudiced towards each other, which, yeah, I mean, you have these like strict, they're kind of like segregated, except for on Lightlark itself, you have like moonlings and skylings and starlings doing stuff. They'd be looking down on each other. But why does she think that just because she met one moonling who's kind of a bitch, that Calder would also be bitchy and rude and mean? But Zed the Skyling treats Isla a little weirdly because she's half Nightshade. That's pretty much the only reason why he would have to be kind of standoffish and weird with her. The group starts strategizing. So Azul comes in. He was in his own meeting with his people, and they want to leave Lightlark. They haven't voted on it yet because Sky Isle is a democracy. But so Oro tells Azul that if the Skylings leave, the island would fall. I guess that means Lightlark. So I don't know if that means Sky Isle or Lightlark. And then if they leave Lightlark, does that mean they leave Sky Isle? And I guess they would make their own land? But where? Aside from them just leaving and that not being great for Lightlark, everybody's worried about Skyling leaving because they need them. They're the ones that can fly, so they need them in the sky. Isla is in like, if we do lose Skyling, we need help from other people, we need other resources. So she proposes to ask for the Vinderland people's help. Those were the people that Oro and Isla took care of together in the first book. They couldn't beat Isla when, Oro's pretty powerful, but they couldn't beat Isla when she was powerless. So, yeah. "Absolutely not," Oro said. "We're desperate, Oro," she said. "We just likely lost another realm." "We're not that desperate," he said through his teeth. "We need more warriors. They are warriors." Oro shook his head, unbelieving. "Do I need to remind you that I watched them put an arrow through your heart?" He didn't need to remind her. She saw the angry mark in the mirror every time she got dressed. If it hadn't been for the power of the heart of Lightlark and Grim saving her, she would be dead. Isla shrugged a shoulder. "That's in the past. We need them now, and we have a common enemy. They already hate moonlings, right? They'll likely hate them more now that they've teamed up to destroy their home." "Who they hate most is wildlings," Oro said pointedly. Isla knew that. Oro had told her during the Centennial that the Vinderland used to be wildlings far before the curses ever existed. She stood from her chair without breaking his gaze. "But I am not just wildling," she said. She was also Nightshade. The Vinderland were not the only people who lived in the shadows of the island. There were other night creatures they had encountered during the Centennial. Perhaps she could convince them to fight. With the threat of the Skyling's departure, Isla is determined now more than ever to continue getting her memories back and also train to use her shadow powers with Remlar. So Remlar takes Isla to an important tree and tells her to kill it. Isla, being wildling, is a lover of nature, and she's like, "Absolutely not. I do not want to kill this tree." But ultimately, he talks her into killing the tree. So she puts her hand on the tree and starts drinking like it's a life force. She collapses because it's too much, and she ends up producing a whole bunch of little trees. So Remlar goes, "I was right, wildling," he said, sounding quite pleased with himself. She heard his voice before falling into another memory. "You are the only person living who is able to turn death into life." So Isla and Grim are now working together to find the sword, and though he asked for it, Grim is visibly appalled by Isla. He hated her. She didn't really understand why. Was it because she was wildling? Was it because she had seriously injured him during their first meeting? Yeah, stabbing someone will generally make them not like you. Grim teleports himself and Isla to the edge of a cliffside. "Where are we?" she asked, gasping through the wind and cold. She wasn't sure where she was expecting Grim to take her first on their search, but it wasn't here. "Before we look for the sword, we need to pay a little visit to its creator," he said simply, "the blacksmith. From Grimm's mouth, the title sounded ancient. So they have to climb the rest of the way to the blacksmith's forge. Grimm is not able to teleport them directly to the blacksmith, and he doesn't really explain to Isla why, but he just starts climbing. Grimm is already, like, he's super climber. Isla struggles. She cuts her hand. She nearly slips and falls off. When she gets near, Grimm just reaches down and pulls her up next to him, and just basically, like, tosses her into the mud. I mean, he's really, really unimpressed with her at this point, and honestly, I find it funny because he is under no obligation to actually like her. She did stab him, and she's been obnoxious. She stabbed him. She keeps showing up when he told her to not. She was in his bathroom when he was getting naked, trying to take a shower. It's giving stalker. I mean, he's allowed to not like her very much at this moment. The blacksmith's house was no more than a shed. It was made of the same stone that had cut her hand, and she could only imagine the type of tools necessary to be able to not just forage those rocks, but build from them. The door was open, and flashes of red flickered through the entrance, sparks from the molten hot flames. Abruptly, the banging stopped. Grimm slowly turned to face her. His eyes found her hand, still dripping in blood. "You fool," he muttered. "He will try to kill you." Then Grimm vanished. Isla was alone. She looked down at her hand. It had already dripped a small puddle of blood below her. Could the blacksmith sense blood? Was he a creature? I mean, are we not all creatures at the end of the day? So Isla takes off running. This is giving A Court of Mist and Fury, when Rhysand intentionally puts Faber's life in danger to, like, basically have her prove her worthiness. But, like, it's very similar. The blacksmith catches up to Isla and Miss Stabby Stab. She stabs him in the eye. He keeps coming, though, and only stops when he sees Grimm, who is his leader. So he defers to him. Grimm wants to know where the sword is, where it's gone. "Decades ago, I heard it had been stolen from a Skyling market. I sensed it return here to Nightshade. Since then, nothing." He frowned. "I can't feel it anymore, wherever it is. It's slumbering. Is there anything else we should know?" The blacksmith opened his mouth again. His eyes darted to Isla, then he closed his mouth. "Nothing else," he said. And also, the reason Isla is there, a Nightshade ruler cannot claim the sword, so he needs somebody else to do it for him. Grimm is happy with the blacksmith's answer, as satisfied as he can be, and tells Isla that he's using her because he's been betrayed in the search for the sword before. He doesn't trust Isla, but he's taking his chance with her because, again, like, not only is she indebted to him, he's going to be her ally in the Centennial, which is actually not deadly. So other people are not supposed to know about the sword, and you may wonder, like, what about the blacksmith? Like, he knows about the sword, and Isla asks as well. This is when it's revealed to Isla that Grimm has the power to take memories away, so he erased the blacksmith's memories. Honestly, so what does that have to do with knight powers? It seems like Grimm is just kind of given powers that are very handy for the story, for the sake of just to make him really powerful, and also just handy for the story. I mean, I guess if you want to, like, I don't know, never mind. I'm thinking too hard about it. Anyway, the sword was stolen, okay? Now, in the past memory, Grimm and Isla are on the hunt to go see some thieves. So when we revisit the past, that's what they will be doing next. They will be going to well-known thieves in the area to find out about the sword. So in the next chapter, we're back in the present yet again, and Skylings have yet to come to a decision regarding whether they will stay with Lightlark or not. Grimm is coming in 20 days. We have a countdown. We have a timer. Isla's starting to become very desperate, so she goes to Marin to ask who the best wielder and Starling is, because they can make barriers. They need a shield to protect the island, I guess the whole island, so they need their strongest wielder, and Marin admits that it's Cinder, but she didn't want that to be known. Marin is incredibly secretive about it and then asks Isla to keep the secret. So what does Isla do? She tells Oro immediately before going to bed. So Isla is just talking to Oro about Cinder, and very randomly, girl knocks out. Like, she just starts having a vision. Darkness fell from the sky. Night cut into pieces. It pressed onto her skin, got stuck in her eyelashes. Howls, Drex, screams, people dying all around her. Through it all, she saw Grimm. The darkness touched everything but him. He was its source. He was looking at her. He didn't look at the dying around him. He just looked right at her and stalked toward her with a concentration that cut through her like a blade. "Run," a voice inside her head said. Leave, save yourself. She either couldn't or didn't. She stayed there as darkness parted her lips and forced her to drink it. She tasted death on the back of her tongue. Then, in her chest, something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Isla tried to fight it, but it was no use. In her vision, her organs began to shut down one by one. She felt it as every part of her withered away. She felt herself die. Aura was cradling her in his arms. Apparently, she had been screaming. Tears choked her words as she tried to explain what she had seen. Her vision, but more. It was clearer now, longer. Before she had seen only Grimm's darkness and destruction. Now she knew how it ended. He kills me, she said. In the future, he kills me. Oro gets upset for his poor, precious Isla, and then Isla passes out again, and we're in the past. The sword that Grimm is searching for was stolen, and there is a notorious group of thieves on Nightshade. So they're not very good thieves then, because people know who they are and they could be easily found. Grimm and Isla meet up again. It's nighttime. Since as before the curses were broken, Isla to Grimm is like, you can't be out at night, you're not going to die in me, right? Grimm has a charm that helps him be out at night, which kind of contradicts some stuff in the first book regarding Grimm and his curses. Like, there's just certain things that are mentioned in the first book where it's like, he couldn't do this because he, the curses. But he was able to be out at night. So Isla and Grimm, they get in a boat, and Isla is mesmerized by the muscles in Grimm's back as he rows. When they get to their destination, he's like, BT dubs, I'm not saving you. So it's you or the sword. If you're in danger, pick in the sword. So Grimm lays out the rules. They're looking for the sword. But if they don't find the sword, they'll at least get information from the thieves about where the sword might be. Grimm and Isla split up. They're at the thieves' hideout. Like, they have a secret hideout that's not really secret because Grimm knows exactly where to go. Grimm goes to the top of the building wherever they're at. Really hard to get a mental picture of what this place looks like. So here's the description of the hideout. The thieves' base was a tall structure with long and rectangular windows, all covered with thick fabric, which made their approach much easier. I'm thinking this, like, I'll have a picture up. Like, I'm thinking of a tower, like a medieval kind of tower. I don't know. That's where they are. Just imagine. Grimm is at the very top. Isla's somewhere in the middle, I'm assuming. Isla gets attacked because this girl gets attacked quite a bit, and she fights back. The next sequence is confusing to me. Like, I don't know what's happening in the scene, so I'll just read it to you. So the man stepped forward. From this angle, he was framed by the window curtain behind him. He grinned as he approached. He wanted to be closer to her. He wanted to be pressed against her. She decided to give him exactly what he wanted. Before she could have second thoughts, Isla rushed to her feet and shoved herself against him with a roar, his blade slicing her arm in the process. He tensed in confusion. She pushed as hard as she could and sent them both crashing through the window. The curtain ripped away, glass shattered. The man screamed for half a second before his entire body melted into ash beneath her. She gasped and accidentally inhaled some of it. The rest stuck to the blood on her arms and face. Isla stood on shaking legs, caked in what was left of the man. She turned very slowly to see Grimm standing in the hall, staring at her through what remained of the window. I guess they're outside. So they crashed through the window, right? So I thought they were falling like many stories. I thought that Isla was like, I don't know. But like, it seems, I guess they crashed into another room, but it seems like they crashed outside, but they were like miraculously on like the first floor, thankfully not really high up. But Grimm is still inside looking at them. That's what I'm assuming. I guess that's what happened. So it kind of makes more sense now that I'm saying it out loud. Grimm ends up torturing one of the thieves for more information, and the guy says, I'll give you information, but please just let me go. I don't want to die. Can you swear that I won't die? Isla swears for the both of them, so obviously Grimm doesn't let him go. After he gets the information, he kills the guy. They find out that the sword is with a guy named Victor in Cretan's Crag. So we're back in the present, and Isla goes with Enya to meet the Venderland. Isla is nervous because the Venderland are cannibalistic. They are a warrior tribe that they like to eat people. Isla wants them to help in the war. I don't think they're very good fighters because they're able to be beaten by two people, but I digress. Isla asks Enya if she's afraid, and we get some information that Enya knows when she will die. For some reason, the Oracle felt it was important to tell a moonling to summon Enya's mother to tell her that her child will die. Okay, so yet again, Isla and Enya have no issue with fighting the Vinderland, but Isla's still like, we need these warriors. So she flings her arms out to the side and produces a bunch of trees through the ice because the Vinderland live on Moon Isle, which I'm assuming is now deserted because Cleo left with everybody. She tells the Vinderland that she needs their help, and they're like, no, bitch, we don't want to help you. They remember her from the first book when she and Oro killed a whole bunch of them. They're like, we would rather die than fight for you. And she's like, okay, yeah, well, Nightshade is about to attack Lightlark, so if you don't help, you'll be dying. The Vinderland continue to argue about helping, and one of them throws an axe at her face. But Isla turns the axe to ash. Good for her, because that would have been an awful death. Isla is counting down the days before going to Cretan's Crag, and leading up to going there, she's contemplating something that Grimm said to her. So Grimm killed the guy who was wanting to basically assault Isla, but she is like, wow, he killed one of his own. One of his subjects. Girl, he was trying to attack you. Fair game. Grimm, in response to what Isla said, because she brought this up to him, like, how could you kill somebody who's one of your own people? Again, he was trying to assault her, but whatever. Grimm said something to the effect of, you hardly know your own people. Why do you care about me killing my people? You know, like, why are you so passionate about this when you don't even know your people? So she decides to use her star stick to leave her room and observe her people. Creepily, I'm assuming watching from the shadows. Apparently she's done this before, but hasn't done it often enough that she doesn't know much about her people. So Isla gets knocked out and kidnapped. This is like the second or third time that this has happened to her in this series so far. How many times has this happened? First book, she got knocked out, kidnapped. This book, she got knocked out by the rebels in the beginning. Did she get knocked out? I think she just got kidnapped. So the people who kidnap Isla are wildlings. They are starving because there's been a shortage of hearts. This is curses being broken, so they're still eating hearts to survive. Obviously, if they kill Isla, everyone will die, but at this moment they don't know that she's their ruler. They don't recognize her. They start carving at her chest, and she starts fumbling for her star stick, and uses that to draw a portal. The only place that she can think of to go to is to Grimm's room in Nightshade. Like, she doesn't have family. The only people she has in Wildling are Tara and Poppy, who she doesn't want knowing that she regularly leaves and escapes. She could have gone to Celeste, I feel like, but for some reason didn't feel like she could go to her best friend at the time. Sorry, I didn't know where else to go. I couldn't go home, she said, and then his arms were lifting her from the floor. My guardians, they can't know he made a sound like a growl and said, you are a fool. I am very much aware. Who am I killing tonight? What? No one. He looked down at her. I don't know how you're still conscious, Grimm said like an accusation. Then, why won't you stop bleeding? Almost to himself, the remaining rope around her wrists turned to ash. I just need you to do one thing for me, she said. Well, two. Her breathing was labored. I need you to get my healing elixir from my room. She described it to him, and he was gone. A moment later, he returned with it. With a shaking hand, she poured the liquid over her chest. Her scream would have woken up the entire Wildling castle. She shook as she applied more until the skin began to slowly grow back. It did nothing for the pain. Grimm silently offered her a roll of bandages, which she took and wrapped around herself, making a makeshift top. It soaked with blood immediately, so she added more. When she peeked over her shoulder, she saw the Nightshade was gone. That was fine. She knew he didn't care about her injury so long as she lived. He returned a little while later and all but shoved a mug at her. Here, drink this. She winced as she took it from him. Medicine, she asked. No, this has sugar. That will keep you conscious. It helps. She glanced down and saw it was dark brown and thick. Was he lying to her? Isla dipped her nose to it to smell. I could kill you 1,000 different ways, Heart Eater, he said flatly. Poison would not be one of them. Isla still has pain and asks about Nightshade. She heard about what it can do in the market. So what it does is it takes away pain, and Grimm says, no, you really should not be taking Nighbane because it makes you the happiest you've ever been, like really, really happy until you slowly die, and then you end up dying with a smile on your face. So Isla asks for alcohol to help with her pain. Grimm does get her alcohol, but she's never had it before, so it burns her throat. I don't like alcohol, and that's why I don't like it. I don't like how it makes my chest feel warm. I know that's the point, but I don't like it. She's like, why do you only have alcohol to help with pain and nothing else? Grimm was trained from a young age to endure pain. That's one of his trainings, or just like a Nightshade custom, I guess, to toughen the mind and body, but it's something that's no longer practiced because it is quite harsh. He was lashed and cut on his back, I guess repeatedly, and just forced to deal with it. Isla has seen Grim half naked at this point a few times and has seen his back and realizes that while Grim experienced torture, he doesn't have any scars on his back. And then she's like, so you're working with Moonling? And she's like, why is Cleo helping you? How did you get that connection, girl? How do you like come to those conclusions? Like, it's kind of like where that thing where you can see the author in the story. How maybe he just is working with a random Moonling healer. Why would you think that it's Cleo that's helping him? I mean, she's not wrong because Grim does start to act weird, but how did you get to that conclusion, girl? I don't know. So, but anyway, this drops a little clue for us that Grim and Cleo are acquainted with one another and have been helping each other or allied in some sort of way for some reason. So Isla recovers enough to go back to her room and Wildling and goes to sleep, only to wake up in the middle of the night and find Grim there watching her sleep. How very Edward Cullen of him. So Grim is there because he's concerned that Isla was going to bleed out and die. So he's just there to make sure that she doesn't die because he still needs her to find the sword. Isla tries to go back to sleep, but she can't because there's a very creepy man watching her sleep. Isla tells Grim that her window, the only part of her room that she was able to escape out of, had to be fixed by Tara and Poppy because when she hurt herself after meeting the swordsmith, she had to blame climbing out of the window on that, like, rather than, letting them know that she's been out on little adventures. Grim asks, well, can't you just use your portaling device to leave? Like, what's the big deal? You don't need a window to escape. Her eyes found the floor. I'm awful at traveling short distances with it, and I can only reliably go places I've been before. The portaling device was born of his own power, which he clearly had complete mastery of. She wondered if he would think less of her than he already did. I might not have mentioned it before. I might have, but I don't know. So the portaling device, it's connected to Grim's power. He was actually the one who created it. Isla wants to know how the star stick that Grim created ended up in Wildling. Isla then asks Grim if he knew her mother. He did not. They have a sexual tension-filled moment, and then she goes to sleep. So we're back in the present. The Vinderlin treat Isla far better than they did before because she displayed Nightshade power. So she's half Wildling, half Nightshade. And wildlings, give life, they grow things. Nightshade can make things decay. So Isla has powers that are both life and destruction, and the Vinderlin apparently have stories about that. So suddenly they're in awe of her. She's like a figure of legend. And then they agree to fight with her. How easy. So Isla asks about their numbers, and they're all trained to fight, but many are sick. So Isla offers to help heal them. In Oro's inner circle, his bestie, Calder, is a Moonling, but he is admittedly not the best healer. Either way, Calder agrees to help. Isla also says they'll use Wildling Elixir. I don't know. Wildling Elixir doesn't really seem that helpful, to be honest. So to do that, to make the Wildling Elixir, Isla draws her puddle of stars, and Isla, Calder, and Zed go through the stars. For some reason, Zed gives her a weird look about the portaling thing. I guess, I don't know, maybe he just doesn't like her, and that's why he's just giving her a stank eye. Isla, Calder, and Zed meet with Ren on Wildling, and Ren shows them where they get the flowers for the Wildling healing elixir. And then while on Wildling, Lynx shows up and the non-Wildling people are like, what the fuck is that? Isla has to explain what he is, who he is, Zed, etc. They're like, can we get more of that? But no, Lynx is one of a kind. I mean, obviously, if you had like an army of giant panthers, I would use them too. Grim was gone in the morning. Her chest still burned in pain, but the healing elixir had worked. Her skin was nearly completely healed. That night, after her training, he appeared in her room again. Any trace of humanity she had seen from him the night prior was gone. He looked furious. If you are going to insist on keeping my device and portaling anywhere you wish, I will teach you how not to be an idiot. Isla glared at him. Or what? Or I will take it back, he said, eyes darting to the floorboard where she kept her star stick. Her hands clenched. She knew he wasn't kidding. Fine, she said. When are you going to teach me? Now. He grabbed her arm and the world turned. When it righted itself, they were in a long hall. This is in your palace, she said, looking around. It's a training room, he said. I didn't bring anything, Isla said. Grim made a motion and her star stick fell through the sky right into her hand. How did you? The first thing you should know is your device is unreliable, he said. I did not pour much power into it. Around other portaling ability, it won't always work. That explained why it had failed her during their first meeting. Portaling power is all about visualization. This is why you believe you can't go anywhere you haven't already been. So how do I go somewhere I can't visualize? Maps help, he said. It's easier to go places when you have a sense of the distance in relation to other locations. Grim clearly didn't rely on maps anymore. Hundreds of years of mastery seemed to mean he could travel nearly anywhere he pleased. Now, he said, about the short distances. Grim was there, then he wasn't. He appeared right behind her. It requires far more control, and control is developed through practice. He nodded at her star stick. Try to portal across the room. Grim teaches Isla how to use the star stick, but he also trains her in sword fighting. They train until the sun comes up, and Grim sends her on her way with a reminder that they're meeting to go to Cretan's Crag, and that she needs to not die by then. Back in the present, keep up. Isla visits Star Isle to find that a little girl around Cinder's age has been attacked and captured by the monsters that live on the island. Isla volunteers to go and see if she can find this child in order to prove to the Starlings that she can protect them. A gigantic serpent attacks Isla, and Avel and Ciel try to help her where they're always there. But Avel and Ciel get hurt. Isla uses her power to constrain the snake, but it eventually turns into a woman. The woman says that she's a wildling, and Isla's shocked that the snake lady is a wildling. She had no idea that there were serpent people from wildling. I understand that Isla was locked up for most of her life, but she knows nothing about her people or culture. It's a huge failure on Terra and Poppy's part for not teaching her anything. I understand they were keeping her from people. They didn't want them to know that she didn't have power, but they could have at least taught her about her culture. The snake lady tells Isla that the little girl is gone. She's dead. And of course, Isla is very sad about that. Here we have more Akotar inspiration, A Court of Thorns and Roses, because Isla's trying to get these monster-like people to help fight against Grimm, which is what they did in A Court of Wings and Ruin, the third book in that series, where Feyre, they were just gathering random monsters and death gods to try and help them in the war, but they ended up not really being very helpful. Isla is kind of gotta catch them all. She's it's like catching Pokemon. The woman bared her teeth. Before Isla's eyes, her dress became a tail. It took her half a second to be upon Isla, growing larger and larger, rising, serpent part piling beneath her. I was wildling, she said. I will not fight for you or anyone else on this island. She leaned back as if to strike again. I will let you live today, and you should take that as a gift. Avel was on her feet. Blood dripped down the side of her head, but she looked capable of flying. Before Avel and Ciel lifted her between them, Isla said, You will not kill another starling. She could hear the woman laughing as they took to the air and left. It was only when she was in bed that night that Isla remembered a very different encounter with the snake. So in this past scenario, it's time for the Cretan's Crag mission. There's a celebration happening on Nightshade. It's celebrating the longest night of the year, but at this point in time, again, Nightshades could not be out at night, so the celebration was done during the day. Grim and Isla are looking for a guy named Victor with a snake in his pants. No, literally, he just has a pet snake, and Isla is kind of grilling Grin on how he will go about getting knowledge about the sword from this guy. Grim goes and talks to a woman who gets flirty with Grim, and Isla gets jealous for whatever reason. But Grim comes back with information about Victor. They find him in basically what's a strip club, and Isla poses as a dancer to get access to Victor. She dances and attracts the attention of not just Victor, but Grim as well, because of course, Victor offers money to Isla and asks for a private show. He wants her to turn them tricks. Isla gets Victor drunk and asks him about the location of the sword. It was stolen from him, he says, by a master thief. She has a well-known hiding place in something called the Caves of Orida, which again, why Do you have well-known hideouts? For if you're supposed to be some master thief, how are people able to find these places? The one thing that this master thief has going for her is that she has a monster protecting her stolen treasure. Victor passes out and Grim comes in at that moment. He stalked toward her and Isla backed away. Her spine hit the wall. Her heart seemed ready to beat out of her chest, but she smirked. I got the information. I know exactly where the sword is. Seems like I am a perfectly good temptress. In the most mocking tone that she could manage at the moment, she said, tell me, non-powerful nightshade, was I able to tempt you? He frowned down at her and she grinned. She stared up at him through her eyelashes. Did I make you fall hopelessly in love with me? Isla gasped as he pinned her against the wall. His hands were rough against her hips. His fingers traveled up the sides of her stomachs to her ribs to her breasts. She arched her back, groaning as his thumbs made wide sweeps across them. She knew he could feel her emotions, her want. No, he said against her parted lips, you are not something special to me. You are not something I want to love. He reached up to her lips and smeared her red lipstick with his thumb. You are something I want to ruin. Then he ducked his head to her throat and bit her. Kinky. It's giving Tamlin and Feyre. Grim makes it seem like he wants to do something naughty to Isla. Instead, he makes a portal with her star stick and pushes her through it. We're back in the present again. So Isla wakes up next to Oro and she starts to feel guilty because these memories of her and Grim are starting to make her a little confused. She's hot and bothered. She's starting to become attracted to Grim again, reliving all these memories, but she's with Oro, technically. Isla, in a moment of frustration, tries to cut off the necklace that Grim gave her that no one else can see, but allows her to call him if he ever needs her. But the necklace is just not able to come off. In this next scene, the Skylings are holding the vote to determine if they want to leave Lightlark. So I guess Isla feels like her saying that she'll give Starlings democracy is what would make Skyling want to stay, because they're champions of democracy. So the vote comes and Azul is not being allowed to fight, probably because if he dies, then every Skyling dies. But part of the fighting force is choosing to help in the war. They'll also stay on Lightlark if Isla follows through with her plan to make Starling a democracy. So Azul is really apologetic about this. It wasn't his decision, but he's just going along with what the vote said. Isla's mad because while Skyling didn't vote to straight up leave, some aren't participating, some are choosing to participate. So their number is less than what they would desire. So she goes to a deserted part of Wildling and starts using her powers all willy-nilly until she exhausts herself into another vision, which I was actually excited about. I was more interested in what was happening in the past and the present, which I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. It just kind of seems like the author was putting more effort into the past scenes. It seems like some of the present scenes were just there to move the story along. The effort in romance, story, everything was being put into the past scenes. So it's been a month since Isla and Grim got information from Victor in the club, and she's not sure why it's been so long since they've gone on another mission. So she portals herself to his room in Nightshade, and while she's in his room, a woman comes in, and Isla is really upset about that. And she's like, well, fuck you, Grim. I'm gonna go look for the sword myself. Trifling ass two-timing bitch, even though they're not really in a relationship. So Isla goes to find a map of the caves of Arida. I don't even know how I pronounced it the first time I said it. Arida. She wants to be able to visualize this place so that she can go and teleport herself there. So she is attacked by Nightshade. She's attacked again. This girl has just she gets attacked all the time. She's always getting attacked. But Grim comes to her rescue. He looked murderous. In front of her, the man's trousers turned dark, dripping down his leg. Some attacker dude peed himself. Grim wore his crown and armor. He looked like a demon come to life. Spikes on his metal-covered shoulders. Shadows leaked from his very form, snaking through the room. Some of the Nightshades scrambled to kneel. Others tried to flee. At once, they all jerked high into the air, feet dangling, clawing at their throats. Grim's eyes never left hers as he stalked over to her. He scanned her body, the cuts across her chest, her ripped open cheek, the long scars across her shoulders, her hands covered in glass. Grim's voice was lethally calm as he said, which one? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes darted around the room, with them all floating at this angle. She couldn't see their faces. Clearly, which body was he? Tears blurred her vision. Isla, he said carefully, like he was trying very hard to keep all of himself reined in. he had used her first name. Which one did this to you? She didn't know what he would do or if she wanted to be the one responsible. Fine, he said, all of them then. There's a chorus of cracks as all their necks were broken in tandem. They all fell to the floor. Grim opened his hand and her star stick flew into his grip. So Grim teleports himself and Isla to his room. Grim heals Isla's wounds with some moonling stuff and they kind of bond, and she turns him on by sitting in his lap as he heals her. We're in the present again, and the ore to make the special weapons that can cut anything has been found. It's hard to move though, so with Isla's power they hope to move it. So Zed asks Isla's help for it, but again he's really weird with her. Honestly, I would be like, if you're gonna be like that, I'm not helping you. You can fix your attitude or I'm not gonna help you, because God, he is so unnecessarily rude. Like aside from her being half Nightshade, I don't understand what his issue is with her. I guess like later on, you know, some of his friends expressed concern about their relationship, which is like one thing, but he really has this like weird dislike of her that seems racist. But so Isla finds the ore, but on the way to getting it, she asks Zed about She asks Zed about Soren. He's the moonling old dude. She just wants to know why everyone hates Soren. Very, very random to bring this up now, but Zed just says that Soren acts like moonlings are better than everyone, and Isla's like, why? I'm sure it didn't happen this awkwardly in the book, but the way I wrote it, it just doesn't flow. Isla finds the ore. She's with Zed, like on the way to getting the ore. She asks Zed about Soren and why people don't like him, but Soren has not really been that prevalent so far. Zed is like, well, people don't like him because he acts like moonlings are better than everybody. And then Isla skips to, he's a moonling, he can help heal people. What? How did we get there? I don't know how we got there. Isla finds Soren and gets him to help with the Vinderland to help heal them because they're sick. The rest of the chapter just gives us an update on Isla's learning how to ride lynx into war. She's getting practice, training, and Oro and the inner circle are debating on the best place on where to fight the war. So Isla and Grim are at the cave, and the monster that the master thief, who I don't think we even meet, uses to guard her treasure is a dragon. But that's not the only defense. There's booby traps. Isla takes a step into the cave and an arrow hits her shin. In an instant, Grim covers her and there's arrows like all over his back. Grim takes like all the arrows and he's like, yeah, we're gonna go, we gotta do this again. They go back to his room. The end of that memory. So after getting that memory back in the present, Isla purposefully harms herself and creates natural barriers to deter the opposing forces. Oh, okay. So she harms herself because pain, as she learned from Grim, Isla creates pain for herself so that she can enact natural barriers. The natural barriers will be used to deter the opposing side, which is Nightshade and I guess Moonling and whoever else their allies would be. Oro comes to find her and he's really upset that she would harm herself to do this. Earlier in the story, if you recall, Oro said that using emotion is not the best way to access power. Realization made him predatorily calm. He taught you this in your memories. Isla did not deny it. Oro looked at her and shook his head. He studied her face covered in blood, then her now healed hand, and said, I don't recognize you, love. Oro makes Isla promise to not harm herself again in order to access stronger power. Isla spends time getting people off the mainland, like portaling them, I guess, away from Lightlark. Before the war starts, Isla's in Starling. She's visiting Celeste and Aurora's old room. She looks around it and starts really beginning to finally grapple with the betrayal from someone that she felt was her friend, because when Aurora was Celeste, they were like besties. So Celeste/Aurora had a collection of orbs that had certain items in them. Isla starts throwing the orbs against the wall. One has a silver feather fashioned into a quill pen, which Isla takes, and I'm just making note of this now because I'm not really sure what the significance of this was. So Grim and Isla have visited the cave 5 times since the first time they visited. They're trying to get past all the booby traps. There's more than the arrows. Grim has taken majority of the traps and placed of Isla. On the last attempt, Isla got some of it. Grim and Isla are both injured. He offers her this like huge pool that's like basically a medicinal bath. They sit in it on completely opposite sides, and that is literally the scene. Present day, Isla's having armor made for Lynx, and he shows her a vision of her mother. So we're before, and I was looking through the rest of what I wrote, and it's like back to back before scenes. So Grim and Isla are not going back to the cave because Grim has a ball to attend. Isla asks to go. He says no. She spends the night bored and wondering if women are flirting with him. So then Isla decides like, well, I'm gonna go. I don't care that he said no. I'm gonna go. And she takes her star stick, portals herself to the ball. She purposely makes Grim jealous, goes to make out with a dude, and Grim follows them, but mostly because he saw the guy put a drug in Isla's drink and then kills him. But not because he's jealous, because he drugged Isla, which, yeah, I mean, fair. We're in the present again. 5 days remain until Grim is going to attack Lightlark, and Isla is with Enya helping make final arrangements for the battle. Enya expresses her concern here of her relationship that Isla and Oro have. Enya essentially says that love makes a person weak. So Isla is walking home across Star Isle. She gets ambushed by the rebels. Okay, in this chance though, like in this instance, for the first time, Isla actually knew that she was being followed, so she fights back this time, and one of the rebels is revealed to be Marin. How could you? She asked, voice shaking. Marin had Cinder. She was a leader. She had tried to kill her. We didn't mean to hurt you before, the Starling said quickly. The moonling who performed that did not consider the fact that you might drag across the balcony. It was supposed to be simple. What do you want? Isla demanded. You have 5 seconds to explain before I bring this cave down all around us. Do you agree with the system of rule, Isla? You each make decisions that affect us all, whether you intend them to or not. The system of rule is a curse. Our lives being tethered together is a curse. No, her answer was immediate. She didn't think it was fair that rulers were born with the bulk of power. That's why I'm implementing a democracy on Star Isle. Marin nodded. We heard and we appreciate it, she said, but the current system of rule goes beyond just votes and voices. We have all historically been tied to rulers' lives because of the power they alone channel. Do you know why, Isla? She shook her head. Because thousands of years ago, the king's ancestors had a nightshade create a series of curses called Nexus, designed to keep the people weak. Everyone except for his line was cursed to only be born with a single ability, and people were cursed to be tied to their rulers, so power could never be overthrown. Nexus was meant to keep us all weak, subservient, loyal. Oh, okay. That's why they are rebelling. That's why they're rebelling. I forgot, and I went through this twice. That's actually my fault because I forgot, but there's a lot happening in this book. So being unhappy with the conditions or whatever, they are rebelling because they're aware of, I don't know how or why, where they learned this from, but they're aware that they have been tied to their rulers in order to remain loyal, because I mean, it puts the rulers at a disadvantage as well, because they have to be like extra aware of themselves in order to maintain the lives of their people, honestly. So I don't know if it's necessarily, it's not great. It's not a great system of power for sure, but I feel like it would be a way to keep the rulers in check as well, because they can't just go and do some random crazy stuff. But then again, if your life hangs, is dependent upon how one person behaves and like what they do, yeah, like I would understand wanting to do away with that system. Marin tells Isla that they believe she has a flare. Isla isn't aware that she has a flare, but they think she has a flare and that it makes her immune to curses, and they have hope that maybe they can untie themselves to the rulers. The catch is though that Aura would have to die. I don't know why. That I don't remember why. But of course, Isla ain't having that. She don't want Oro to die. So, cut to the past. So, Grim drops in to Isla's room like that little girl in, like, I think it was Annabelle, like the prequel. So, he goes unconscious, but Isla gives him healing elixir. Next, when Grim wakes up, he's tired and he's doing better, but he's not dying, but he's, you know, not too hot, not feeling himself right now. Isla asks what could have possibly caused the injury, and this is where Grim opens up about why he's looking for the sword. So a scar opened in Nightshade, releasing the Drex. The Drex were people once, but Cronin, I think his name is Cronin Malvair or something, he's one of Grimm's ancestors. He cursed his warriors to become monsters, and the sword that Grimm is looking for controls the monster. So Grimm wants to find the sword to stop the Drex because they're killing people. Grimm and Isla continue to talk. Grimm confesses that he's trying for an heir. That's why initially in the beginning when he and Isla first meet, where he doesn't know who she is, that's why those women were all lined up. In Nightshade, rulers don't marry and fall in love. They sleep with someone, that person has a child, and then the child grows up in the palace. The woman isn't involved in the raising of the child. So Grimm is basically anti-love, and this hurts Isla a little because she has a crush on him at this moment. She's fallen in love. Isla goes to Oro, his inner circle, and Azul, and tells them about the sword and how it can be used to control the Drex. So in the story, we have not gotten to the part where Isla and Grimm in the past obtained the sword. We don't even know if they've obtained the sword, but Azul theorizes that maybe the sword is still with the dragon and that maybe Grimm doesn't have it, but Zed is like, no, he likely has it because the Drex, when they first showed up, they came from the direction of where Nightshade is. So at this point, Isla's even more desperate. She goes back to the snake lady to recruit her, but Snake Lady refuses again. And since Isla can't get the Snake Lady to help, she goes to other creatures on the island to recruit them for the war. So Grimm shows Isla a field of flowers that look like the kind of flowers that wildlings use to make their elixirs, but nightshades use it to make Nightbane. It is the same flower, it's just used for different things. So the two of them go back to her room. Grimm gets handsy with her. They're about to smash, but he senses a disturbance in the forest. Drex are breaking out of the fissure again, and he has to go and tend to that issue. So again, back in the present, Isla tells Oro about what she learned from her latest memory. As she's telling him, she gets a vision through links since they're connected. Grimm is on Wildling Newland right now, and he takes all of her people to Nightshade and leaves a note saying, "We're all waiting for you." Could have left a little more detail on that note. Grimm and Isla, they have sex. Next chapter. So after getting the note from Grimm, Isla confronts him about taking her people. He did not kidnap them. They went willingly because he has Tara and Poppy. He's harboring them. So for some reason, the wildlings trust them enough to go to Nightshade. I mean, I guess it makes sense why they would trust Tara and Poppy because they did basically run Wildling while Isla was growing up. Isla accuses Grimm of using the sword to control the Drex. He confirms that he does indeed have the sword, but he is not using the sword to control the Drex. He claims he's not trying to kill anybody. He's trying to get people off Lightlark for whatever reason, and he feels like he gave everybody enough time to do so. It would be really nice if he would just say the reason, but, you know, we wouldn't have a story if he was honest and just told us what he's doing and what his plan is. So later in the chapter, Isla asks Remlar to teach her how to cut off powers through the love bond. Grimm still loves Isla, so she thinks that she can steal his power and kill him while he's powerless for, you know, the moment that she has his power and has stolen his power. This, I don't understand. The whole like love bond thing, I still don't really get it. The love bond is why Oro was able to use Isla's power in the first book, because they both loved each other. So we're assuming Isla, though, in this moment, even though Isla's like, she's going through the past and like she's remembering her time with Grimm, she's reevaluating some things. I think that Isla has a crush on Grimm again through her past memories, but I don't know if she's in love with him, but he does love her. So I guess because he loves her, she can take his power. There was a comment on my other video that the person said, they explained it. I think maybe they made it make sense for me. So they explained that it might be if you love somebody, you're willing to give your powers, but if you don't let them, then they don't get your powers, which, you know, consent. I guess it makes sense then. So we're assuming It's just not explained very well. But I guess because Grimm still loves Isla, he would be consenting to give up his powers simply through loving her. It's not really consent though. I don't know. But anyway, so I guess that does kind of make sense. So Isla at this moment, her feelings, I guess I would say, are complicated for Grimm, but Grimm does love her. So she wants to find a way to take his power entirely, cut him off from his power, and then kill him while he is powerless. Isla and Grimm go on a hot air balloon ride in Sky Isle. And then at this point, there's just back-to-back before chapters. So in this before scene after practice, Isla and Grimm are finally about to tackle the dragon once and for all. But it goes exactly as you would imagine. The dragon wakes up, starts breathing fire. Isla's in the path of the fire, but Grimm saves her. However, by using his powers, the sword disappears because that's what the dragon was guarding. So it's gone. The whole point of this whole mission was that Isla was needed because a Nightshade ruler could not retrieve the sword. So thereby, using his powers, the sword is gone. Why did you do that? Isla said. She had bathed and changed into one of her dresses. Grimm had gotten changed in his own chambers and returned here to her room in her castle. She was grateful he had, but it didn't make any sense. Grimm's eyes locked on hers. You think I would watch you die for the sword? Did you think I would make any choice that wasn't you? Yes, she said, incredulous. You said so. He just looked at her. Things changed. She realized then that she would have done the same. She would have chosen him. But your realm, you said you need it. For you, it's the most important thing in the world. My realm does need it, he said. He traced his fingers down her temple and said in the quietest of voices, but it is not the most important thing in the world. I'm glad to know that my life as a citizen is not as important as your girlfriend. That is so nice. Isla and Grimm have sex again. The narrative is trying to make me think that this is the first time that they boned, but there's no way. There's no way that this is the first time, because the chapter where I said that they did have sex, what were they doing if they weren't having sex? I don't know what they're doing. Heavy petting? What were they doing? Grimm has completely and totally fallen for Isla at this point, has even told her that she has ruined him. So a few days later, Isla captures a dragon and gives it to Grimm as a pet. Now they're a cute little family. We're in the present. Next chapter, Isla and Oro share a moment, and then she has him go oversee the making of the Starling shield, and then she goes to the vault in Wild Isle to finally open it. She promised Oro she would not purposefully hurt herself and use emotion to make herself stronger to open the vault, but she does. She hurts herself. She's able to open the vault. The vault was starless black, and it was empty. No, that was impossible. She could feel the power everywhere, metal in her mouth, enough to nearly bring her to her knees. Where was it coming from? Blood from her hand dripped onto the smooth stone floor. Her bare feet slid across it as she desperately searched every corner. Nothing. Roaring filled her ears. The world seemed to tip to the side. There were footsteps behind her. Isla whipped around and nearly dropped to the floor. Tara said, hello, little bird, because that's what they used to call her, little bird. So Isla thinks that Grimm might have teleported Tara to the vault. I don't know how or why, because she was having the hardest time trying to open it. So how? I know that he can visualize. He's so powerful, he doesn't need to visualize to teleport things or himself, but I would think that it would, I don't know. Either way, Isla does not know how or why Tara is here either. She's just theorizing that maybe Grimm teleported Tara there, but the two of them fight. Isla loses and Tara leaves, but before leaving she thanks Isla for opening the portal. Isla feels a calling from the forest. She follows the feelings and finds the sword that Grimm has been looking for. So coincidentally, Grimm portals into her room, sees that she has the sword, and is like, ooh. Okay, so let me explain something real quick before I get into I'll just explain why Grimm is like, yikes, you have the sword, whoops-a-daisy. So, nightshades can detect curses. We learned this later on in the first book, but we're reiterating it again for the sake of the past and everything. So, Grimm knew that Oro did not have powers, although she really didn't have powers, it's just her powers are hidden. But if she had powers or had any indication of having powers, Grimm would have been able to feel the curses that every person in this world has, but he does not detect any curses on her, therefore is like, oh, she doesn't have any powers. So Grimm knew Isla's father. He was Grimm's general, and he had a flare that meant he was immune to curses, which then I guess its flares are hereditary. So Isla probably has the same thing. Grimm thought that she could break the curse on the sword, and in turn, by breaking the curse on the sword, it would cost her her life. Grimm has fallen in love with Isla, and that's why he abandoned the search for the sword. He's not particularly happy that the sword has been found. Isla gets mad because, she didn't know that her life was going to be sacrificed. I don't know why. I mean, I guess it's like an initial first feeling or first reaction, but he did say it's you or the sword. That's when they first started looking for it. He was very honest about that. So we're back in the present. Isla tells Oro that she opened the portal, and that's really all the chapter is about. So we're still in the present. It's the morning of the battle, and Isla goes to visit the Oracle. The Oracle tells her that she is the key to deciding the fate of the world, and she has to decide who she's going to kill, Oro or Grimm. Isla, Oro, and his inner circle, they exchange wishes to, be safe, all that, and then they wait for the battle to commence. Everything is pretty quiet and standard until Isla on top of Lynx is knocked sideways. Lynx is attacked by nightshades. I think nobody worry because he's fine. Isla kills a bunch of nightshades by turning shadows into a scythe. More shadows turning into weapons. Skylings are in the air. They use wind to get the nightshade army or like part of it to bunch all together. Sunlings create a wall of fire to box the nightshades in. Isla confronts Cleo on the battlefield, who's there, and she claims that she's doing the battle and everything, I guess, for her son. There's Drex. So Grimm has not shown up yet, but at some point in the battle, Isla is cornered by nightshades. Then Grimm shows up and he's like, if you touch her, you're dead. In the past, when Grimm made Isla aware of who her father was and everything, that was her first time learning that she is half nightshade. After this, Grimm shows up after about a week to talk to Isla. I told you I never wanted to see you again, she said. The betrayal was still raw. She didn't mean it. She had missed him so much, but she needed time before she could think about forgiving him. Grimm tried at a smile. I might have good news for you then, he said. What do you mean? He looked so serious. Grimm swept across the room and took her in his arms, and she let him because she knew something was wrong. He studied every part of her face as if trying to commit it to memory. Her starstick was hot against her back. It was glimmering in his presence as if in warning. Something isn't right, it was saying. She gripped his chest and said, what's wrong? The scar has opened in a place it never has before, a place previously deemed safe. Isla's stomach sank. He had told her about the scar and how he didn't think nightshades could survive much longer. Hundreds of people lived near it. Isla gasped. She opened her mouth, but he beat her to it. Whatever happens to me, Heart, I want you to know something. What? She said. She tried to shake out of his arms. Grimm, nothing is going to happen to you. Nothing. Let me talk, Heart, he said, pressing a finger against her lips. Interrupting is very rude. She could tell he was trying to distract her, trying to make her smile. She did not. I need you to know that you changed everything. He ran his thumb down her cheek. The gods don't listen to people like me, but I would go on my knees and beg them to let me keep you. You were once the bane of my existence, and now you are the center of it. So from the way he's speaking, Isla can tell that Grimm is saying goodbye. They kiss. He takes her star stick and he vanishes. Back at the battle scene in the present, Oro comes. So Isla and Grimm are face to face, and then Oro shows up. Oro and Grimm have a little fight. Oro tries to get Grimm with a lightning strike, but Grimm teleports Oro into his place so that, they switch places. Oro takes the lightning. Grimm is going to deliver a final blow, kill Oro, but Isla is able to get a hold of his powers, Grimm's powers. So we're right back where the last before scene left off. Isla is very sad that Grimm has seemingly said goodbye to her forever. She tries to use their love bond to search for him. She does find him, and then through their love bond, she uses his portaling power to get to his location. Grimm and other Nightshade warriors, they're in the middle of a Drek attack. Isla uses the sword to control the Dreks because she has the sword, remember, and gives Grimm her power. This drains her of her power. So I guess that was the sacrifice of using the sword, is her power. Why though? Well, I guess it would have used anybody's power who would use it. No, I guess it would sacrifice anybody's life who used the sword. It just happened to be her. I don't know. We're back in the present. Isla has Grimm's power. Oro's about to kill Grimm, like he's ready. You know, everything's set up. We're good to go. But Grimm says that if Oro kills him, then Isla... Oh my god. Here, it came out. If Oro kills Grimm, Isla will die. We're back in the past. Isla has died. This bitch has died. This is the second time that she's died in this series so far. Anyway, so she died, but then she's alive again because Grimm bound her to him. We're back in the present. You bound her to you, Oro said, voice shaking with anger, with shock. She remembered now Grimm's explanation in the past. She knew binding someone to oneself meant sharing a life, not just powers, but life itself. One could not die without killing the other. That was why, when the arrow had split her heart in two during the centennial, she hadn't died. I had to burp. She hadn't died immediately, not just because of the power of the heart of Lightlark, but because Grimm was keeping her alive. It was only a temporary solution, Oro said, voice shaking with anger but also fear. Grimm nodded. The other world offers a permanent one. That was the reason for this war. That was the reason for all this death. She remembered what Cleo had said. In the other world, souls can rise once more. He wanted to open the portal to save her life. So, wow, I didn't even mention that. Did I mention that? Oh my god, I don't even... So there's supposed to be like another world that is not, you know, obviously incorporating Lightlark. Did I mention it? I swear to god, I do not remember. But there's a whole nother, like, I don't even know if I would call it like a alternate universe. I don't know, but there's another... I mean, I guess it would technically be. There's another world that everybody migrated from. They're living in Lightlark and stuff, but there's a whole nother place that Cleo and Grimm are trying to get to. Isla tells Oro to just go ahead and kill Grimm, which would kill her. She never does mention to just like take her wildling power though. So I would hope that that would be her next thing so that her entire realm doesn't die. So Isla wants Oro to kill Grimm. Even if she dies, she's fine with it. She says Grimm is dangerous. He's going to kill everyone and then he's going to kill me. But suddenly she comes to the realization that in the vision that she had, it wasn't a prediction. It was actually a memory, and it wasn't Grimm who killed a whole bunch of people. She saw herself returning to the place where it had all happened, where she had offered all her power. She didn't know she had to save Grimm. She saw the village on the outskirts of the scar, charred. There were only shapes of people, of children, where they once stood. She saw herself collapsing on the ground, sobbing, screaming, I did this, I did this. Oro was in front of her now, hands pressed against her face, taking her out of the memory. You are not a monster. Was that what she had been saying over and over? You are not defined by one mistake, but it was one mistake. Isla had used emotions to wield her power multiple times, recklessly. Even after Oro had warned her, she hadn't been able to help herself. She had done it again and again. She was not to be trusted. She was reckless, dangerous, a monster. And he was right. Oro deserved so much better. Get away from me, she screamed. She tried to step away, but Oro took her hand. Let me go. She understood now how it was even a possibility that she might kill Oro. Just by proximity to her, he was in danger. She had no control of her emotions, of her powers. She would kill him. One day she would be overcome with emotion, she would lose control yet again, and she would kill him. She saw it so clearly now. Let me go, she bellowed, her voice thick, tears falling into her mouth. She tried to wrestle herself away, but Oro didn't budge. He didn't understand. He didn't know how much of a danger she was to him. Grimm's voice seemed to rumble the world as he said, let go of my wife. Surprise, shawty! Isla asks Grimm if he'll stop the attack if she goes with him. He says yes. Oro's obviously like, no, don't go. But Isla turns to him, tells him she loves him, but says she also loves Grimm as well, and then goes with Grimm to Nightshade. The end. That was Nighbane. You're welcome. I am curious to know what happens in Skyshade, so I will be doing a video for that. I thought that would be the end of the Lightlark series, but apparently It is not. So I kind of want to do Fourth Wing. And honestly, I started this whole Lightlark thing because I wanted to know for myself what was going on because I forgot. And I listened to Onyx Storm recently, had no idea what was going on. And I feel like I need to do a plot summary just simply for myself. But after Onyx Storm, like, I didn't like Fourth Wing. I listened to Iron Flame out of curiosity, and then I wanted Onyx Storm out of curiosity after what happened in the second book, but I do feel like my curiosity has been cured. But it really depends. But I'm not getting to, I think I should finish this first, and then I think I should finish Sense and Sensibility, because I think I did that like last year, like beginning of last year. So maybe that'll be like a springtime video, because I don't know, Jane Austen, even though Pride and Prejudice is set in like autumn, Jane Austen feels very springtime. Maybe it's the colors, maybe it's all those picnics that they be having. I am very tired. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.